Sup folks, welcome to the part 15, of What If Deku Run an Orphanage, Chapter 91, Who You Are to Me Author's Notes. So guys, I have good news. I finally know what to do with the USJ attack. Yay. Now you might be wondering, Kyodon, it took you 91 chapters to figure out what to do with the freaking USJ attack? Yes. The issue with the USJ attack for this story is that it happens too soon in the original timeline for me to do much with. But at the same time, I knew I wanted to do something with it. And so I just kept pushing it back. And as I kept pushing it back, I kept getting questions about where we were in the timeline, and if the USJ attack happened, and why I haven't mentioned it. I just kind of hoped if I made no mention of the timeline, then people would just not mention it either. But that was not the case. But now, here is the answer to a few questions regarding the USJ attack. Firstly, where are we in the canon timeline? Well, we are well past the point where the original USJ attack happened. And we're about a month or two off from the sports festival. Second, why hasn't it happened yet? Well, I told you the out-of-story reason why it hasn't happened. But there is an in-story one too. All for one got distracted with something else. More on that later. Third, will it still happen? Yes. And no. So the USJ attack won't happen in the way you remember it in the canon. I'm going to change a lot of stuff. But the premises of League of Villains shows up with an army of villains and an armor that's on par with All Might will still remain the same. But it's going to be expanded. Very expanded. And as for the fourth question, I'm sure you're now asking, expanded how? Well, there are gonna be a lot more villains. And I'm not just talking about the fodder. There are gonna be more Namu, as well as more actually powerful villains, to give the heroes 1A, and the kids a run for their money. Both the added Namu and villains will include familiar faces, and some new OC villains based on villains from other series. There will be villains based on characters from Spider-Man, Resident Evil, Dragon Ball Z, and Super, as well as Kill La Kill, and the Fate series. I wonder if you can guess who the familiar faces will be, and who the new villains will be based on. Also, there will be one new kid, with a stupidly powerful quirk. It's the biggest arc I've written for this story. But don't worry, I have everything already planned out, because trying the seat of pants approach in an event this big with this many characters, I'd find myself overwhelmed. Now for the last question. When will this arc happen? And I actually kind of have an answer to that question. But not an exact one. The answer is soonish. I have 2 more arcs I need to go through, 1 new character to introduce and a few slices of life chapters. So we very well may surpass chapter 100 before we reach this arc. Anyway, let's get on to the chapter. Izuku was laying in his bed, getting ready to go to sleep after a long day, when suddenly he heard a knock on the door. Who is it? Now, Izuku didn't know who could be knocking on his door this late at night. It could have been one of the girls looking for more cuddles, like Iri, or Kyaku. It could have been Yami or Fu asking for more food. It could have been his mother wanting to talk to him. Or in the worst case scenario, it could have been Momo, Ida, or Okako telling him that something terrible has happened. It's me. Who Izuku did expect, probably the last person he would have expected, was Fuku. His eyes widened, and he was stunned into silence for a moment, before he quickly responded. Oh. See, come in. There was a moment of silence. Presumably, Fuku was hesitating before she ultimately opened the door. Hi. Izuku. Fuku stuttered, before looking at the ground with a pained expression. This whole thing was concerning to Izuku. Firstly, Fuku approaching him was odd. Not bad, but definitely odd. And now this. She was definitely trying to call him Dad. Which should have pleased him, and it would have, if not for how forced it was. It was clear she had tried, and failed, to force herself to call him Dad, and was clearly displeased at her inability to do so. But why was she forcing herself to call him dad in the first place? Hey Fuku. Is everything alright? Do you need anything? Izuku asked, not wanting to sound overly concerned. Sometimes that would make Fuku think she did something wrong. I'm okay. Fuku said a bit too quickly. It's just I was wondering if it's not asking too much if you could possibly spend the day with me tomorrow? Almost immediately, Fuku closed her eyes, and held her head down, putting her hands over her head and seemingly waiting to be struck or yelled at. Of course. I may be a busy person, but it's my job first and foremost, to take care of you and the others. Izuku reminded her. And to make sure none of you want for anything. So if you want to spend more time with me, then I'll be happy to do so. Thank you so much. Fuku said. I'm really looking forward to tomorrow. I have a lot of things I want to do with you. I'll be looking forward to it too, Fuku, Izuku told her, giving her a kind smile. We should both get some rest, sounds like we have a big day tomorrow. Oh. Yes. Oh, could you imagine if I asked to spend time with you, and then I couldn't do anything right because I was too tired? Fuku gulped. That would be so disrespectful. It'd be fine. It happens to all of us. Izuku reassured her. But let's try and keep that from happening. Right. I'll be going back to my room now. Fuku said as she shuffled back towards the door. So sorry for disturbing you. Good night. Good night, Izuku told her as she left. Once Fuku was gone, Izuku laid back down. I'll have to figure out exactly what's going on with her tomorrow. Hopefully, it's nothing too serious. Izuku woke up to the smell of eggs and bacon. He opened his eyes and saw a veritable feast, in front of him, laying a large wooden tray in front of him. There were eggs, bacon, pancakes, and orange juice. Something you'd see as typical American breakfast. And it smelled amazing. Gee, good morning. Izuku looked up from his breakfast and saw Fuku sitting at a small table next to him, with a stack of pancakes and strawberries on her plate. She looked up at him anxiously, with the tiniest tinge of hope in her eyes. I wanted to make you some breakfast, as a thanks for everything you've done for me. And I really wanted to eat with you too. A huge smile grew on Izuku's face, and he moved out his arm to pat Fuku on the head. Thank you. It looks amazing. But you don't have to thank me really. I really do. Fuku insisted, looking down at her food with a frown. I had to leave my room early, and ask Sato to teach me how to make this, because I heard you were a big fan of American stuff, so I wanted to make an American-style breakfast. I wouldn't have been able to do that without you. I probably wouldn't have been able to do a lot of things without you. Without you, I'd probably be all on my own in a room forever. Point is, I have a lot to thank you for. So, please enjoy the meal. Izuku stopped himself from sighing or frowning. It was hard seeing Fuku be depressed. But, she was still so much better than how she was when she got here. He had to remind himself that this was progress. Even if acknowledging that fact made him even more depressed. Shaking his head to rid himself of those thoughts, Izuku decided to finally indulge in the meal. He cut into one of the pancakes, before using his fork to rub the pancake around the plate, making sure there was plenty of syrup on it, before putting it in his mouth. Oh. This is really good for someone who just learned how to cook it. Izuku thought to himself. It wasn't mind-blowing by any means. Going just above average into the pretty good tier of foods. Competently made. And while that didn't sound like much, it was still very impressive considering her complete lack of experience. People didn't tend to do well when having to do something they'd never even tried before, so for Fuku to do this well, was pretty amazing. After swallowing it, he gave Fuku a smile, and a thumbs up. It was probably the best way he could handle it. Too much praise and Fuku would think he was lying, and too little and Fuku would think she didn't do well enough. It was a tricky balance to reach using words, so perhaps a gesture would be better suited. and judging by Fuku's sigh of relief, before she dug into her own food. The two of them enjoyed their meal together for a bit, but Izuku felt the need to fill the silence. "So, have you given any thought to what you want to do in the future?" Izuku asked her. Both to make conversation and because he was genuinely curious. "Any plans? An ideal career? Anything?" Fuku paused for a moment, before swallowing her food and giving Izuku a nervous look. I want to do something creative. Everyone tells me that I'm really good at drawing and writing. And I know how to sew and cook too. So I think I could probably be a good author. Or artist, or dressmaker, or a cake decorator. If that's okay. "Of course, it is," Izuku told her. "No matter what job you choose, I will always support you, and try to help you achieve your dreams. Although I didn't know that you wrote." The moment Izuku said that, Fuku's whole body went stiff, and her pupils shrunk as she made the deer-in-headlights expression. Telling Izuku that she probably said that part by accident and didn't even realize it. I do, but... Fuku looked down at her plate, her face bright red, and beads of sweat dripping down her face. "You don't want to show it to me," Izuku said, figuring that out rather quickly. "Please don't be mad." Fuku begged, almost immediately. "I'll show it to you if you really want, but Fu's the only person that thinks it's good as Mew, and that might be because he's the only person who's read it besides me, but I think it's really terrible and kind of cringe, and Fuku's it's alright." Izuku had a feeling he would be saying that a lot today. "I told you before, I'll try not to force you to do anything you're uncomfortable with. If you don't want to show me your writing, then you don't have to ... but you're supposed to be my DD dad," Fuku said, managing to force herself to call him dad, although that didn't seem to make her any happier. In fact, her calling him dad seemed to make her mood even worse, as she looked down at her plate with an intensely guilty expression. "I should be able to share anything with you," Izuku sighed and gave her a sad look. "Unfortunately, we haven't had much time to bond. One of the downsides of my job is that I can't spend time with all you kids at once. And some will call for more of my attention, meaning that it can leave my bond with certain children a bit lacking. I've been content to let Irian help you out with your difficulties, and I do think that was the right decision, but as a result, you are one of the children I've spent the least amount of time with, unfortunately. But hopefully, we can fix that today." Fuku paused for a moment, before giving her pancakes a determined pout. "Why yeah. We'll fix that." After finishing up their breakfast, the two moved on to the first activity Fuku had planned for today. A game of catch. Izuku and her were currently in the backyard, with Izuku holding the ball, looking mighty confused. "Are you sure you want to do this?" Izuku asked her. "I never figured you were one for catch." "Why yeah, well I just want to try new things," Fuku told him. Her constantly shifting eyes and nervous expression, even more nervous than normal that is, gave her away. Lying was not her strong suit. But Izuku decided not to call her out just yet. He had to be careful when dealing with Fuku, he couldn't be too aggressive. "Alright, but if you don't feel like you are having fun, we can stop anytime you like," Izuku told her, before raising up his arm. "Are you ready?" Fuku got a good distance away from Izuku, before looking around, getting nervous, and walking a bit closer, and then repeating this process a few more times, until she found a spot close enough to Izuku, but also far enough that he could reasonably throw it at her. "Oh okay. Do it." "Alright, here goes." Izuku threw the ball at her softly, not too hard but just hard enough to reach her. However, instead of catching it, Fuku's eyes dilated in fear, before she ducked down, and putting her hands in front of her face. "Please no." The ball flew over Fuku's head, landing a few feet behind her. "Huh?" Fuku seemed to snap out of whatever had taken over at the moment and realized what she'd done. "Oh no, I messed up." "Fuku, are you sure you want to do this?" Izuku asked again. You looked like you were scared for your life there. I'm sorry. Sometimes that man would throw stuff at me when he got really angry, so I just kind of did this on instinct. Izuku couldn't hide his disgust after hearing that, as he once again wondered how any parent could do that to their child. However, Fuku, being Fuku, took Izuku's disgusted expression the wrong way, and almost started crying. I'm sorry. Please don't be mad, I won't do it again, I swear. The moment Izuku heard that, he cursed himself for not training himself in, and letting himself forget his present company. Wait Fuku, I wasn't mad at you. I was just upset at your old father for doing that to you. I'm sorry. No really, it was my fault. I should have prepared myself better since I knew that I got used to doing that when things were thrown at me. Fuku argued. You shouldn't have to apologize for something like that. If anything, it's my fault for not having noticed that after all, this time. Izuku countered. But you're so busy all the time, how could anyone blame you for that? I was the one who said we should play catch and completely forgot about the fact that I'm like this. Fuku rebuked. This continued for quite some time, but after eventually deciding to just drop the subject, Izuku said they should probably abandon catch for now. And so they moved on to the next part of Fuku's activity list. Bike riding. Well, bike riding was what Fuku put on her list. However, Fuku forgot one important detail. She didn't know how to ride a bike. This is what led to Fuku falling on the ground as her bike tilted to the side. Again, Izuku hadn't moved at all, staying stationary on his bike, watching as Fuku tried to ride her bike to no avail. Are you sure you don't want training wheels? And no thanks. I can do it, Fuku said, picking herself up again. She knew that her age, using training wheels would be pretty embarrassing. Just give me a second. Fuku got back up, and got back on her bike, before making another attempt to ride it. And once again falling over. Izuku cringed at seeing her wince in pain. Can you at least let me teach you then? I really can't stand the sight of you getting hurt this much. Oh okay. Fuku groaned. The lessons were slow going. Izuku would hold the handles as he taught Fuku to pedal. This phase of the lessons would go well, but whenever he would try to let go so she could pedal on her own, she wouldn't make it very far before she fell again. Mostly due to a lack of confidence. After falling down yet again, Fuku sighed in frustration. Darn it, why is this so hard? Don't worry about that. You made it a lot farther this time. Izuku reassured her, offering her a hand to help her back up. As Fuku got up, she looked up and noticed the sun was now a different position from when they first started, and her eyes grew wide. Wait. How long have we been doing this? Izuku looked at his watch. About 2 hours. 2 hours. Fuku shouted in a panic. Oh my god, I can't believe we've been doing this for 2 hours. Are we gonna have time for everything else? Should I move on or? Fuku considered her options. Should she continue trying to learn how to ride a bike, making very slow and painful progress, or move on? In the end, it wasn't as difficult a decision as she thought. Actually, could we move on to the next thing please? Fuku asked Izuku nervously. If that's what you want. Izuku agreed. What's next? The next activity took Izuku and Fuku into the forest. Seeing as wild animals and potential intruders were lurking there, Izuku instructed a hound to remain nearby, as well as a few brinjals. Although they were to stay out of sight, as to not stress out Fuku with their terrifying appearance. And what were the two of them doing in the forest? Fishing. Yes, the two of them were sitting by a lake with some fishing rods, waiting for some fish to show up. Suddenly, Fuku felt a pull on her line. I got a bite. Oh. Reel it in. Izuku encouraged her. Fuku stood up and started reeling in the line. However, the fish seemed to be pretty heavy, and she had to try and pull it out. But that didn't seem to do much as Fuku struggled to try and pull it up. Izuku helped her out, grabbing her arms and helping her out. Come on, we can do it. AGH. Fuku and Izuku finally pulled the fish out, hurling it into the air as it flopped around, startled by being taken out of the water. Izuku caught the fish as it came back down, and held it as it flopped around in his arms. Wow! This is a pretty big one. Great job, Fuku. Fuku was absolutely beaming as Izuku put the fish in the bucket with all the other ones they'd caught. So far, the fishing had been doing swimmingly. Much better than the other two activities. They did have to look up some YouTube videos to figure out how to fish, and after a couple failures, they started to get it down. And even the waiting process was very enjoyable. It was peaceful, and the feeling of reeling a fish, which she would later then cook, was amazing. She could actually see this becoming a hobby of hers. Maybe she'd listen to some podcasts next time. Although she didn't mind the peaceful silence there was now. Seeing the peaceful smile on Fuku's face made Izuku's heart feel full. It was such a rare thing to see her so at ease. Well, he himself didn't really see her like this much, considering most of the time she only went out wearing her hoodie. However, Izuku had something else on his mind as well. Fuku had been acting weird this entire time, and now that she was at ease, Izuku felt it was finally time to confront her. Fuku. Izuku broke the silence. Fuku looked at him curiously. Are you going to tell me what this all about? Izuku asked her. Fuku tilted her head and gave him a confused look. What? You suddenly asking to spend time with me, while in no way unwelcome, is odd. Not bad. Just odd. Izuku explained to her. And then there's all the times you kept forcing yourself to try and call me dad. Then today you had us do a bunch of stereotypical activities you'd see someone do with their father on TV, or in a movie. None of which you're familiar with. Something is obviously up with you, and as your caretaker or as your father if you prefer, I need to know what it is, and if I should be concerned. Please, be honest with me. Fuku's face fell, a saddened expression overtaking her, as she once again looked away from him and down at the lake, staring at their reflections. After a few moments of silence, she finally worked up the nerve to answer. I want Iri and to be my sisters. I mean, they might already think of me as their sister, I think they've called me that a few times but I want it to be official. But for that, I need you to be my dad. But I just can't think of you as my father. Fuku. Izuku looked at her with a saddened expression, not because of the whole can't think of you as my father thing that stung a little, but he was more so upset because this was clearly eating her up inside. And I don't know why. Fuku shouted, tears of frustration welling up in her eyes. I like you. You are a really good person who's done so much for me and the people I care about. You've given me everything I ever wanted, and things I didn't even know I wanted. And you even worked yourself to the point of getting sick, just for us. But whenever I try to think of you as my father I feel sick. I feel like I want to throw up and I don't know why. What's wrong with me? Fuku was really crying now, although softly, her tears falling into the lake as did so. I'm sorry. I thought that maybe if we spent more time together, then I'd be able to think of you as my father no problem, but I still feel gross when I try to think of you that way. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry, I don't know why I feel like this. There was a few moments of silence between them. The only sound in the whole area was the noise Fuku's tears made as they hit the water. But eventually, Izuku responded. What is the definition of father to you? Huh? Fuku was confused by the question. Or rather why he asked it out of the blue. I asked, what is the definition of a father to you? Izuku repeated. If you were to guess, what would be the dictionary definition of the word father? A man who takes care of his children, and helps them grow? Fuku guessed, unsure where Izuku was going with this. Alright. But when you think of the word, father or dad, what do you think of? Izuku asked her. What comes to your mind first? Please be honest. Fuku paused for a moment, before deciding to trust Izuku, and started thinking about the word father. Almost instantly she was struck by a memory of her own father, yelling at her. Another memory of him hitting her. Another memory of him tying her to a chair. Fuku winced, almost as if she'd been stuck. Giving Izuku his answer. "You keep thinking of him, don't you?" Izuku said. Yes, Fuku admitted. "And therein lies the problem," Izuku told her somberly. "That man has ruined the term father for you. When you think of a father, you don't think of a man who cares for and supports you. You think of a terrible person who mistreats and abuses you. But I know that's not what a father's supposed to be like," Fuku argued, a horrified and desperate look in her eyes. "You know that up here." Izuku pointed to her head, before moving his finger down towards her heart. "But not down here. The heart and mind can often disagree. Even if you know something is true, it may take a while before you ever accept it. Sometimes people simply don't and let themselves go on believing lies because they can't bring themselves to accept the truth, even if they want to." But Fuku's tears started picking up speed. Her hands tightened around her fishing rod, and she clamped her eyes shut. Suddenly, Fuku got another bite. "Ugh!" Fuku shouted out in rage and frustration, startling Izuku, who was not expecting such an outburst. Fuku started reeling in the line furiously, doing so hard Izuku was concerned she might break it. "Damn him. Damn that horrible man. Even when he's not here he's still running my life. I hate him. I hate him. I hate him." The furious girl leaned back and pulled the fish out of the water, once again causing it to go flying into the air. Izuku grabbed it before it could hit the ground, and looked back at Fuku, who was now panting with exhaustion after her outburst. If I can't think of you as a father, that means me and can't be real sisters," Fuku cried. "That's not true," Izuku told her softly, but firmly, causing her to give him another confused look. "Yes, normally two people would have to share a parent of some kind to considered siblings. But that doesn't have to be the case." "Huh?" Fuku continued to be baffled by what Izuku was saying. "Many people will call each other sisters or brothers, regardless of their parent situation," Izuku explained. "Sure, to some people being a blood sibling or a step-sibling is all there is, but for others, it's simply the next evolution of friends. People so close to you, they might as well be family. And really, what's to stop you from calling them, you sisters? They won't. I certainly won't. At that point, you only need to ask yourself, do you want to call them your sisters?" "Yes. Of course, I do," Fuku said, a hopeful glint in her eyes. "Well, then it's settled." Izuku put his hand on her head and gave her a reassuring smile. "You three are sisters. And you can be sisters with Kiba, Kyaku, any other part of our family. Even if you can't think of me as a dad. But that's just weird," Fuku pointed out. "This is a foundation for overly powerful children, run by a quirkless 16-year-old, whose first employee was hired after breaking and entering on our property, and destroying our security system." Izuku chuckled. "A lot of things are weird here. I guess. Are you sure it's fine if I can't think of you as a father?" Fuku asked. "To be honest, given what you think of when you think of a father, the fact that you can't think of me as one is a compliment," Izuku told her. "There's no need to worry about me forcing things on you. Especially not something like that. The only things I'll ever really insist on is that you take care of yourself, and don't hurt others." "That apostrophe s. Really all you want from me?" Fuku asked. "That's all," Izuku confirmed. I see," Fuku said, trying to take that in. Because it really was hard for her to understand not having expectations placed on her. She just wasn't used to it. But it was overwhelmingly relieving. The two of them sat in silence once again, enjoying the feeling of the sun beaming warmly down on the two of them. And thus, Fuku gained peace of mind and a new hobby. So all in all, a pretty day for her. To everyone who played Fire Emblem Three Houses, I think you can understand the reference. Chapter 92, Cupid Candy Chaos Part 1. Yami looked at the picture on Mina's phone. That bean is an immorph from an alien. Have to make some changes. Not enough bones, but could make it. Mina's smile widened. She had come to Yami's room to see if he could make this movie monstrosity, and it seemed like there in fact hope. Knock knock. Come in, Yami said. The door opened, and Shraku came in, bringing Amaya behind her. Yami, I brought you, friend, here, Shraku told him politely. Hey Yami. Amaya greeted him cheerfully. I came for our trip to lighting up the city. Ever since Yami and Amaya had gone to the city that one time to give people joy candies, they had decided they would do this every now and then. Today the two had decided to just that, with Izuku's approval, although they would have to decide on who would supervise them. You have candies? Yami asked. Amaya nodded and opened her basket, showing off all the mood candies that were inside. However, something was off about them. Yami took one of the candies and noticed that it was pink rather than yellow. Different color. Amaya's eyes widened, as she realized what had happened, and saw Yami about to eat one. Wait Yami, don't. But it was too late, he had already popped one in his mouth. The moment he did, he felt a wave of warmth wash over him, a pleasant feeling that washed over all his other emotions. He looked up at Amaya, and then suddenly, he couldn't stop. Now he liked Amaya. She was his first friend, not a sibling or whatever Ken and Nara were to him, and she was very pleasant to be around. But for whatever reason, he liked her significantly more now. Just seeing her gave him a happy feeling, and he was really glad she was here. Also, she was just very nice to look at. She was just very pretty, and her bright blonde hair just radiated joy. And that adorable red blush was also adding to his desire to keep looking at her. However, looking past that, he could see that she seemed to be distressed. That bothered him. It really, really bothered him. Upset. What's wrong? Yami said, getting really close to her, and looking her in the eyes. Those were love candies. Amaya stuttered, as her face turned as red as a tomato. I must have accidentally made those instead of happy candies. Love candies? Mina and Shraku's interest was piqued. Like candies that make you fall in love? Mina grinned, getting several ideas already. Shraku was in the exact same boat. Is that why Yami can't look away from you right now? Did he fall in love with you? Yami tired his head. Love? Was he in love with Amaya right now? This feeling was certainly similar to how he felt about Izuku, but different. It was love, but a different kind of love. Still, he didn't have the urge to kiss her or anything like he saw in fiction. He was just very fond of her right now. And thought she was very pretty. No, nothing like that. Amaya shook her head flusteredly. The love candy boosts the affection you feel towards the first person you see. But it doesn't have to be romantic. It can be the love you feel for a parent, or a sibling, or a friend. Why, Yami probably just thinks I'm a very good friend right now. Yami hummed. That seemed accurate. That doesn't explain why he's looking at you like that, Shraku said with a smug look. I just think she's very pretty, Yami answered honestly. Amaya made a high-pitched whining noise, as her face somehow got even redder. I know exactly what to do with these, Mina said, staring at the basket with a mischievous gleam in her eye. I think we have the same idea, Shraku said with a creepy grin. Amaya looked at them nervously. Whatever you planning, please don't. The power of love can do terrible things in the wrong hands. Oh come on, we're not gonna do anything that bad. Just some pranks. Mina said. Lighten up a bit. No one's gonna get hurt. Yeah, we'd never hurt anyone here, you know that. We're just gonna have some fun. Shraku said. And see some ships sail. HMMMMMM. Amaya still looked unsure. Please. I'll make you a dress. Free of charge. Shraku pleaded. And I'll give you. Mina fished around in her pocket, before taking out some cash. 1,000 yen. Amaya hesitated for a second but eventually took the money. Deal. Deku swiped the basket, and she and Mina looked at the candies with glee. By the way, how long does the effect last? Mina asked. Well, how long the effect of my candies last depends on how I was feeling at the time I made them, and how hard it is to shake off that emotion, Amaya explained. Love is super powerful, so it takes a while for it to wear off. It'll probably last for a few hours. Neat, this is gonna be super fun, Mina said. Come on girl. Let's go play Cupid. I can't wait. Deku responded as the two left the room to start their spree of terror. You know, I kind of wish Ryuki was in this game, Okako said. Okako and Izuku of them were currently in Izuku's room, sitting on his bed playing Superhero Bash together. Izuku was once again playing All Might, and since Ryuki was in fact not in the game, nor her actual favorite hero 13, Okako was playing Mirko. I mean, I understand why 13 isn't in here, she's a rescue hero, but Ryuki is a combat hero, Okako argued. Yeah, it would be really cool to play as her, but how would she even work? Izuku asked while playing the game. I mean, she's a massive dragon. I can't imagine how you would design a playable character like that. I mean, couldn't they shrink her down? Okako counted. Izuku shook his head. I think a lot of Ryuki's power and intimidation factor comes from her size. It would be like trying to shrink down Mount Lady. I just don't think it would be a good idea. Okako sighed. I mean, I guess. I just wish there were more female heroes in the game. I agree. Izuku nodded. Knock, knock. Come in, Izuku said. Mina came into the room, with a grin that was a bit too wide. Hey, guys. Hanging out? Mina asked. Glad to see you're getting some R&R. Yeah, it's been a while since I got to lay back and play video games. Izuku smiled back at her. Thank you for all the help, by the way. No prob. Mina waved it off. Hey Oka, Amaya just showed up and brought some joy candies. You want one? Mina offered Okako a love candy, which she had covered in edible paint courtesy of tricking Momo, to make it look like a joy candy. Oh, thanks, Mina, Okako said, taking the candy. Welp, guess I better go. See ya. Mina quickly got out of the room, her grin widening as she exited. Huh. That was weird. Okako shrugged, as she popped the candy into her mouth, before turning to Izuku. So what were we? Okako froze. Izuku was smiling. This was no surprise to her. Izuku had been smiling for a while now since they'd started playing. And she was very relieved to see him genuinely smile once again. But for whatever reason, right now it was making her heart skip a beat. She just couldn't look away from his face right now. His dark green, messy hair, his deep green eyes, all complemented his smile perfectly. It was so bright, it was like staring at an emerald sun. Then Izuku turned his head and looked at her. And their eyes met, and so they stared at each other for a bit, until Izuku started to blush intensely, causing Okako to blush as well as she realized she was being really weird for whatever reason. So what were we talking about? Izuku quickly turned his head away, his face now super bright red. For some reason Okako couldn't pull herself together. She barely managed to tear her eyes away from Izuku, and she couldn't even remember what they were talking about mere seconds ago. I don't remember. Oh. Well, it probably wasn't very important. Izuku responded. So how are you, parents? Okako paused. For a moment she managed to get past the love candies effect and think about her parents. And Izuku. A gentle smile came to her face as she recalled her last few visits to her parents' new house. They've been great. Better than ever. Thanks to you. Oh well, I only did what any good friend would do. Izuku's blush deepened. Okako actually laughed at that, even though her heart was beating much faster for some reason. friends spend stupid amounts of money to get their friends' parents work, even though they're almost on the other side of the country? I don't think so. What you did was beyond helpful. Finally, they don't have to wake up in the morning and figure out which meal they have to sacrifice to save money. Or spend all day having to make calls to try and find work. Or any of the other thousand stupid things we had to suffer through because we didn't have money. Now they can just be happy. You have no idea how much that means to me. Honestly, I'm so happy I could kiss you, she froze. The moment she realized what came out of her mouth, she froze, and her face got so red, she was worried she might pass out with all the blood going to her cheeks. And Izuku was in the same boat. Okako screamed internally. Why did I say that? I mean, I wouldn't mind kissing him, but wait. What am I thinking? We're just friends. Just very, very, very close friends. The closest friends. Friends for life. Oh God, why does that feel wrong? What is happening? Wait a minute. I only started feeling weird after Mina gave me that mood candy. She must have something to do with this. I knew that her smile was a bit too wide. Oh, when I get my hands on her, I'm going to knock knock. Suddenly there was someone else knocking on the door, interrupting Okako's inner monologue. Unfortunately, had crashed so he wouldn't be responding for a little bit. "See, come in." Okako responded, hoping that this could break up the weird tension in the room. Todoroki came into the room, looking stoic as normal. He took one look at Izuku, who was still frozen, and completely out of it. "Uraraka, is Midoriya alright?" "Why, yeah, he's fine," Okako said. "Right, Izuku?" Izuku didn't respond. Okako reached down, and grabbed Izuku's hand, shaking him a bit. "Hey, Izuku." Izuku jolted into alertness the moment their hands met. "Huh, what? Huh? Midoriya?" Todoroki said, to get his attention. "Huh? Todoroki?" Izuku finally became aware of his surroundings again, although the blood rushing to his face was not helping him reorganize his thoughts. What did you need?" "Sorry, I was a bit out of it." "I could see that." Todoroki noticed. "Anyway, I have the sudden urge to see my sister. I don't know why, but I want to. I wanted to ask permission to go home and see her for a day." Oh, that's fine." Izuku approved. "Go ahead." Todoroki nodded and took his leave, closing the door behind him, and leaving the two alone together again. There was an awkward silence that permeated the room for a few minutes, as the two sat in silence with completely red faces. Eventually, Izuku broke the silence. "So why your hand is still on mine?" Okako's eyes widened, and she realized that her hand was in fact still touching Izuku's, and she quickly pulled it away. "Sorry." It's fine," Izuku responded, looking away from her. I have to go do something real quick," Okako said, practically jumping from the bed to the door, so fast you'd swear she was using full cowling. "See ya." Okako left the room in a hurry, ready to go murder her pink classmate. "I don't understand how you don't understand this," Nara admonished her brother. "It's a simple equation." "You're calling this simple?" Ken held up the book they were working in. "This is a monster equation. Look how stupidly long it is. Are we ever going to actually use this in life?" The two siblings were currently in the library, with Nara tutoring her less academically gifted brother, with great difficulty. "You might have to use to determine something important later as a hero. You never know?" Nara said, frustration sinking into her voice. "Also, you have to know this stuff to get into a hero school in the first place." "That's so lame." Ken groaned as he leaned back in his chair. "Why do things have to be so complicated? It's really not." Nara scoffed, rolling her eyes at her brother's overdramatic behavior. Ken glared at his sister. "Easy for you to say, Miss Know-It-All." Nara was about to give a scathing rebuttal when Shraku scuttled. "Hi," Shraku said, before dropping the candy in front of Ken, and then leaving. Both siblings watched her go and then kept their eyes on the door she just left from, confused as to what just happened. "Okay, that was weird," Ken said, not hesitating too much in popping the candy into his mouth. "Yeah, weird." Nara squinted at the candy with a look of suspicion. "Ken, are you sure you should be eating that?" Ken shrugged. "Candy is candy. If she gave it to me, I'm gonna eat it." Nara sighed. "Fine. Let's just get back to work." Ken groaned, and looked back at his sister. However, something seemed off. He couldn't muster the same feeling of annoyance that he did usually, and instead, he was focused on how determined she looked. Sure. Whatever. Despite Nara's best efforts, Ken couldn't really focus too much on the work itself. Rather, ironically, he was more focused on how hard she was trying to tutor him. How much effort she put into trying to make him understand the things on the page. It made him feel like a dick for being so dismissive and rude earlier. This distraction did not go unnoticed by his sister, however. "All right, what's going on?" Nara said, putting down the book, and giving her brother a frustrated look. "You've been giving me weird looks for the past half hour." "I don't know," Ken said, blushing as he turned his head away from his sister. "It's just you're working really hard to try and teach me this, huh?" Nara raised an eyebrow. "Yeah, obviously. Not like it's easy to get all of this through your thick skull." Ken sighed. "I guess sorry for all the unnecessary comments, I guess. It's just this is really frustrating and really boring, and I'm just venting out you even if you don't deserve it." Nara gave him a dumbfounded look, just staring at him in shock and confusion for a bit before expression shifted to that of concern. "Are you okay?" "Aside from feeling like a jerk, yes," Ken said sarcastically, before lightly hitting the side of his head. "Here I go again. It's like the only way I know how to handle frustration and anger is with rude and sarcastic comments." Ken sighed, putting his head down on the table. "I don't get it. Why do you go so far for me?" "I wouldn't say this is going so far," Nara said, started to get really concerned about her brother's suddenly odd behavior. "I'm not just talking about this," Ken told her, picking his head up, and looking her in the eyes. "I'm talking about everything. All the times you stood up for me in front of Mom and Dad, and at school, and you even came with me when DOC took me away. And in return, I treat you like garbage." Ken paused again, his frustration and anger fading into a sad, somber expression, as he looked down at his omnitrix. "I almost suffocated you in your sleep. Ghost Freak almost suffocated me in my sleep." Nara corrected him firmly. "Stop that," Ken told her weakly. "Even now you still defending me. Pretending that Ghost Freak is some separate person that takes over my body. He's not. It's me. It was all me. All being Ghost Freak does, is make me angrier. It was still me choking you. Because at the time, I wanted to do it. Even after all you did for me. All because I was jealous." "Jealous?" Nara questioned. She'd never heard about this before. "You were jealous?" Ken paused again, before answering. "Yeah, I was jealous. How could I not be? You were always so much better than me. Or at least everyone always seemed to think that. You were smarter than me and more popular than me, and whenever something went wrong, it was never your fault. Always mine. They'd always accuse me. And I know it's not your fault. I know that. But I just kept feeling this this anger bubble up for you, that didn't deserve. And I always knew you didn't deserve it, and that just made me even angrier." He paused again, and Nara just sat there and processed all this new information, with a thoughtful, yet concerned expression. "But you were all I had," Ken continued. "And you knew that. That's why no matter how many times I told you to go away, you stuck around. And thank you for that. I can just never say this for some reason, but thank you. I don't know why that's so hard, but it is. And it makes me wonder why you put up with me ... and when you're going to have enough one day. Don't talk like that idiot. Nara scolded him. I told you, didn't I? I'm not leaving you alone. That's an easy thing to say, but we all know how unbearable I get, Ken told her. I don't even really have a right to complain as much as I do. Have heard about what happened to the other people living here? What happened to Eri? I just uck. Is that why you've been avoiding her? Nara had been meaning to ask him about that for quite some time now, and it seemed like she was finally gonna get her answers. I just can't stand to be in the same room as her. Ken sighed, looking a bit guilty. She went through all that, and she doesn't complain, or get angry, or anything. And I get upset whenever Izuku makes me eat vegetables. It just doesn't feel right. Nara winced a bit, knowing the feeling, or at least part of it. When she'd heard about Eri's background, she felt a lot of things. Horror, disgust, anger, pity. But she also felt small. Nothing she ever went through would compare to what Eri experienced. And so how could she complain, or want for something, when in the same room as a person who literally died multiple times, via having her body ripped apart on a molecular level? It almost felt uncomfortable to be in the same room as her, because all she wanted to do was apologize to the poor girl for everything she'd been through. Even if she seemed mostly fine right now. Honestly, Eri could stab her with that horn, and she'd still feel sorry for her. And she didn't really know to handle these feelings. But she did know that Eri herself wouldn't want to be treated any differently, so she tried to keep everything the same with her emphasis on try. But now wasn't the time to think about that. Right now Nara had to worry about whatever was going on with Ken. Clearly, something had been done to him. No doubt thanks to that strange candy shrug who had left. And Nara was definitely going to have a long discussion about not drugging her brother without her permission. But that candy didn't put these thoughts in her brother's head. It just brought them to the forefront, and finally made him admit all this to her. And now that she knew about it, being the good sister that she was, she had to fix it. Listen, just because someone else has been through something worse than you, that doesn't mean everything you've been through doesn't matter, Nara told him. The two of us, you especially, have been through the ringer. And we've suffered our fair share. It's fine to be angry or upset about what happened to you. Maybe you could be a bit less of a jerk about it, but overall, some people have responded to what we've been through way worse than you have. At least you're not trying to use a sucky childhood as an excuse to hurt people. You're saying I haven't hurt you? Ken asked skeptically. Not in any way that's mattered to me. Nara shook her head. Do remember back a couple years ago, when that boy tried asking me out, and then got way too pushy after I rejected him? Ken's face contorted in disgust. Oh yeah, that creep. Ugh. And do you remember what you did when you saw him, trying to hold my hand? Nara asked with a slight smirk. I transformed into 4 arms and threw him to the other side of the playground. Ken chuckled for a second before grimacing as he recalled what happened next. Then I almost got expelled, and Mom and Dad beat the crap out of me. Right. It was stupid, it was beyond unnecessary. Nara smiled at him. And it genuinely sweet. You're not a bad person, Ken. Far from it. You just have some issues. And if you have that much of a problem with yourself, instead of mopping, you can actually improve yourself. Easier said than done. Ken sighed. Yeah, but you're not alone. And I don't just mean me. Nara pointed out. Izuku genuinely cares about us and will do everything in his power to help. So if you want to do something about yourself, asking him and me for help is a good way to start. Ken didn't respond for a bit, taking a moment to think over what Nara had told him, before smiling at her. Thanks, sis. Seriously, what is up with me, right? I think it had something to do with that suspicious candy shrug who put in front of you with no explanation, and that you ate without absolutely hand hesitation, Nara told him. I swear if she drugged me with candy I'm gonna kick her spider butt. Ken said, getting up and running out of the library to look for the six-legged girl. Nara sighed and laid her head down. He's such a handful. Still, I should probably tell Izuku about this. He should know stuff like this when gets us a therapist. Whenever that's happening. Feeling tried, Nara decided it was best to go to bed. Which was, probably for the best. If Shrek was going to start messing around with more of those candies, she had a feeling things were gonna get chaotic, real quick. Chapter 93, Cupid Candy Chaos Part 2 of Fuku. Yap. Fuku jumped after suddenly hearing Mina's voice on the other side of the door, quickly closing her laptop and cutting her writing session short. Mina? That's right. Mind letting me in? I have a present for you. Mina said in a sing-song voice. A present? Fuku thought about what Mina could possibly want to give her. Is it acid to the face? Oh come on Fuku, you should know me by now. I'd never hurt a hair on your head. Mina told her. Does that mean you'd hurt everything but my hair? Fuku asked, holding on to her messy hair. You know what I mean. I'm not gonna hurt you. Trust me. Eri and Kav said good things about me, right? That has to mean something. Mina pointed out. Well, they do say good things about you. Fuku reasoned. I guess I could let you in. And so hesitantly, Fuku opened up the door and allowed Fuku into her room. Hey, Fuku. I don't have much time because I'm trying to give these out to a bunch of people, but I have some special candy for you. Mina told her, putting a piece of candy in her hand. Oh. That sounds good. Fuku was about to eat it when Mina stopped her. Wait. Don't eat it now. Eat it in front of the mirror. Mina told her, as she ushered the child over the mirror. Fuku stood in front of the mirror and gave Mina a confused look. Why? Just trust me. And make sure you're looking directly at yourself when you eat it. Mina told her, as she stood off far to the side. Go ahead. It'll be great. Fuku gave Mina a suspicious look and considered not doing it, before also considering that might anger Mina. And in fear of that, she just decided to do what she told her. She looked directly into the mirror and put the candy in her mouth. After chewing it for half a minute and swallowing, she kept wondering why Mina was so insistent. I don't see anything different. It's just my adorable self. Wait, what? Fuku's eyes widened. Where did that thought come from? Since when did I think I was cute? I'm not cute. I'm not supposed to be cute, but... She took a closer look at herself in the mirror, and noticed that despite not changing in appearance one bit, she looked different somehow. Her messy purple hair, her eyes, her face, her small stature, all of it now seemed cute to her. She looked cute. Fuku smiled in the mirror as she admired herself, feeling a wonderful sensation push its way into her heart and her head, and pushed out many of her negative thoughts. Mina also smiled as she watched Fuku run her hand through her hair, knowing her plan had worked. I wonder if I would look cuter if I styled my hair, Fuku muttered to herself absent-mindedly. Mina wanted so badly to just dress Fuku up, do her hair, cover her in accessories. Make the girl feel as pretty as she actually was for as long as the candy's effect lasted. Let her love herself the way she should. But she had other things to do. However, she knew someone who could take her place. Hey, why don't you go see Taru? She has a lot of cute stuff that I know she'd love to dress you up in. And I know you'd look just the cutest. Mina told her. Are you sure she'd be okay with that? Fuku asked. Why wouldn't she? I'm sure she'll love you when she gets to know you. Mina told her. Why wouldn't she? You're cute, talented, and a really good girl. Fuku blushed from all the praise being heaped on her but couldn't help the huge grin from growing on her face. Normally when people said stuff like this, she doubted them, though they were lying, denied it. But right now she didn't feel like she was wrong. She was, at least in her eyes, cute. She had talents. She believed she was a good person. The Fuku in the mirror was not the one she knew. This was better Fuku. She was better Fuku. And she wanted to see just how much better she could get. Oh okay. I'll go see her, Fuku said, running to go get her hoodie. She quickly put it on and left her room to look for the invisible girl. Mina smiled and patted herself on the back. Good job Mina. Good job. You know, I think I've become completely desensitized to the smell of blood, Jiro said, as she mopped the floor of the training room, while Kaminari scrubbed the walls. And I really don't know how to feel about that. Yeah, it's weird, right? Kaminari responded. This place looks like a psychopath's wet dream. But when I got here the only thing I thought was, man, this is gonna be a pain to clean. I mean, on the bright side, it'll help us when we actually see dead bodies on the field. Great, thank you for putting that in my head, Jiro told him, her words dripping with sarcasm. I really needed a reminder of how I'm going to run into dead bodies in the future. Thank you so much. What? I was just trying to point out a silver lining. Kaminari defended himself. You said you didn't know how to feel about it. I was just trying to make you feel better, you know. Oh yeah. I feel so much better. Knowing now when I look on at a dead body, I'll be able to think to myself, I'm so glad this smell doesn't bother me at all. Jiro gave him a cocky smirk. You really are a genius. Well, you're smiling, aren't you? Kaminari smirked back. TCH, only because you're such a massive idiot. Jiro rolled her eyes and went back to focusing on the floor. Hey, guys. Truku came into the room with a piece of candy and an insidious smile. I'm so thankful for all the hard work you've been doing. Here Jiro, I brought you a gift. Hey, what about me? Kaminari asked, looking a little offended as Truku handed Jiro the candy. I'll make you a scarf or something, Truku said dismissively. Well, I'm off. Have fun. And with that Truku scuttered off in a hurry, not saying another word. That was weird. Jiro shrugged, looking down at the candy, before popping it in her mouth. Sweet. What kind of candy was it? Kaminari asked curiously. Don't know. Don't think I've had this type of candy before. Jiro answered as she continued mopping. It was strawberry flavored, I think. Was it chocolate? Kaminari asked. I just said it was strawberry. Jiro deadpanned. Well, what if it was strawberry chocolate? Kaminari defended himself. Strawberry chocolate. Does the stupid shit that comes out of your mouth ever stop? Jiro turned to look at him next. Have you ever heard of strawberry? Jiro suddenly stopped mid-sentence, as she noticed that Kaminari suddenly looked different to her. What the hell? Why does he look different? It's not like he had time to change anything while we were here, so what's happening? Unfortunately for her, Jiro ended up staring at Kaminari for much longer than she'd like, trying to pin why he looked different all of a sudden. And this didn't go unnoticed by the blonde. Hey Jiro, you okay? Kaminari asked. You've been looking at me weird for a while. I know I'm handsome, but it's not like that, idiot. Jiro snapped, her face turning red after realizing what she'd been doing, and hearing Kaminari's response. She quickly turned back to mopping the floor, this time more furiously than before. That damn idiot thinks he can say shit like that because he's good looking. Wait. Where the hell did that come from? Since when did I think that idiot was good looking? I mean, he never looked bad. And his costume's pretty cool. But he's too much of an idiot to be good looking. Even if it is kind of cute sometimes. Seriously, what's going on? Jiro's face seemed to want to stay that shade of bright red, as her chest felt funny in ways that made her freak the hell out. So much so, that she wasn't paying attention to what she was doing, and slipped over a puddle of blood. Ah! Kaminari reacted almost instantly, rushing forward and diving toward her, landing on the ground behind her, and letting her fall on his back. Gaka! It took Jiro a second to realize what exactly had happened, but when she did, her face was even redder, and immediately got off of him, and scowled at the boy. What the hell was that? Well, I couldn't catch you in time, so this was the only other option, Kaminari explained as he got up, and saw that his shirt was now covered in blood. Ah, great. What did you think would happen when you slid across a bloody floor? Jiro scoffed, crossing her arms and turning away from him. Well, I supposed to do, let a pretty girl get covered in blood? Kaminari winked at her and put up some finger guns. Not a chance. Somehow, Jiro's face went even redder. You son of a ga. Jiro turned around and stabbed Kaminari in the arm with her jacks. Ow. What was that for? Kaminari cried out in pain, rubbing the spot on his arm where she stabbed him. That's what you get for saying stupid things you don't mean. Jiro huffed. What are you talking about? Kaminari gave her a confused look. Calling me pretty. We both know I'm not exactly the most attractive girl in class. Jiro pouted, looking down at her chest. Don't give girls false compliments, it's a good way to get slapped. But I wasn't lying, I think you're pretty. Even if you have no tits out. Kaminari cried as Jiro stabbed him in the arm again. Alright dumbass, then exactly about me is so pretty? Jiro asked him angrily. For some reason, her heart was racing with anticipation. Well, that apostrophe s dot. Kaminari took a good hard look at her, causing Jiro to blush even harder and look away again. I don't know. I guess your fashion sense is great. And there was the disappointment. Jiro didn't hated how much her heart dropped when he said that. Really? My fashion sense? Great to know. I'll just be absolutely disgusting to look at if I let my dad choose my clothes. I don't know, okay? It's hard to explain why you're pretty, you just are. Kaminari shrugged. It's just something about you that's kinda attractive. The way you talk, move, everything you do is just so you. And I kinda think that's awesome. Maybe that's it. Once again, Jiro felt her heart do things she didn't want it to do. It was a weird compliment and definitely not a conventional one, but that made it all the more genuine. Kaminari really thought she was attractive, and she did not like how much she liked that. TCH. Don't think too hard about it, your brain might crash. Jiro muttered. Hey, are you alright? Your face has been super red ever since you ate that candy. Kaminari pointed out. Jiro's eyes widened, as she realized that Kaminari was actually right. Whatever was happening, these weird feelings only started appearing when she ate that candy. Which could only mean one thing. Give 1 second, I a spider I need take care of, Jiro said, dropping her broom, and started running out the room after Shiraku. Huh. Guess she really hates spiders. Kaminari shrugged. Kiba was walking back to her room from the kitchen when she walked past Taru's room and overheard something interesting. Oh my god, Fuku, you look so cute. She heard Taru squeal. I really do, don't I? She heard Fuku say, in a voice that sounded much giddier than what Kiba was used to. Kiba immediately stopped walking, and looked at Taru's door with surprise and confusion. Fuku? What is she doing with Taru? And what's this about looking cute? We always said you were cute. Iri's voice was the next one Kiba heard. Thank you. I think you are cute too. Fuku giggled. Actually, giggled. Now Kiba needed to know what was happening. She knocked on the door rather loudly. Given her strength, it was nearly impossible for her to knock any other way. What's happening in there? Oh. Lady Kiba. You can actually, just give us a second please my lady. Taru said. Kiba sighed. Fine. I will wait. But my time is precious, so do your best not to waste it. Of course my lady. Taru giggled. Kiba heard some whispers on the other side of the door. She couldn't make anything out, but she was sure they were planning something. After a couple minutes, Taru responded again. Okay, we're ready, come inside. Kiba squinted at the door with suspicion. I wonder what they did in those last 2 minutes. She opened the door and roar. On the other side was Fuku, but she looked very different from how she was used to seeing her. There was no hoodie in sight, Instead she wore a brown and pastel dress, with a skirt covered in bears, and a big bear paw on top. She also had on brown stockings, and little bear paw shoes, and bear paw gloves. Her hair was also brushed, and styled into pigtails, held by bear-themed hair clips, with a bear ear headband on top. Fuku currently had both her pawed hands up, trying to make herself look menacing. And it was the single cutest thing Kiba had ever seen. Thud. Lady Kiba! Fuku shouted out in horror as Kiba fell back onto the floor, clutching her heart. I'm fine. I think I just saw an image of the afterlife. And it beautiful. Fuku said, as she pulled herself up, and looked at Fuku. Fuku, what possessed you to wear such adorable attire? You don't like it? Fuku asked, looking discouraged. No. Do not mistake my words. You look so cute I wish to burn your current appearance into my memory. Kiba corrected her. In other words, she thinks you look super cute too, Kiba. Tari giggled. Fuku started believing us about her being cute all of a sudden, and now she wants to dress up. Eri said, and now that brought attention to herself, Kiba suddenly got a look at her outfit. She was dressed in a bright ruby red dress, with some black accents, and some red gemstones along the skirt. She also wore a pair of bright red shoes and a red hat. All of which made her utterly adorable as well. After taking a good long look at the two of them, really drinking in the sight, she turned to Taru. So these two have been here, dressing up in various adorable outfits, and you didn't see it fit to summon me? I'm sorry Lady Kiba, if it helps I did take pictures. Taru said, trying to appease her. I trust those pictures will be sent to me with haste, Kiba said before she turned to see Fuku looking in the mirror again, smiling. Dear sister, as happy as I am at this development, you appear to be in an unusually good mood. I wish to know what caused it. Oh, I don't know. Fuku admitted. I just looked in the mirror, and I didn't feel like I was myself. I mean I'm still me but I don't feel like me. I normally don't like me but right now I feel like someone that I do like. Fuku looked into the mirror, at her reflection, and smiled, touching the mirror. I feel like I like myself. While Fuku was smiling at herself in a mirror, everyone else gave her a confused look. Not quite understanding what she meant by that, but getting a general impression that it was a good thing. Well, you seem happy so it must be a good thing. Taru surmised. Hey Lady Kiba, can we dress them up in some of your clothes? Please. Normally, Kiba would scold her for suggesting such a thing. However, the thought of putting Fuku in some of her more elegant clothes, I will allow it. Really thank you, sis. Fuku said giving Kiba a smile, brighter than any she'd given before. Thud. Kiba. Kiba closed her eyes, as she lay on the ground. I have lived long enough to witness the radiance of 1,000 supernovas. Truly it was good to life. I can rest in peace. Lady Kiba no. Taru shouted dramatically. However before they could continue the bit, they heard the sound of running in the halls outside. Wait a minute, it was just a prank, shouted a panicked Mina as they heard her running by. We just wanted to improve your relationships. Shraku shouted in that same panicked state. Come back here, you pink devil. They heard Okako shout, sounding very, very angry. You a dead woman, Mina. You hear me? Jiro yelled, sounding even angrier. I'm gonna fry you, ya little bug. Shouted Ken in his heat blast form. I'm an arachnid. Hunt. 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 Shraku cried. As the sounds moved away from them, as the chase continued further into the house, the girls all looked at each other. Should we be concerned? Eri asked. There was a short pause before Kiba answered. I'm sure father has that under control. Now, to my room. Mina and Shraku stood in Izuku's office, in front of the greenette himself, with their heads held low, and their bodies banged up. Mina was covered up in bandages, with bruises all over her face, the swelling very evident. Shraku was also covered in bandages, with burns covering her body. and Izuku was looking over them with a deadpan expression. So, I'm not surprised, I'm just slightly disappointed. We were only trying to help out and have some fun. Fuku pouted. I'm sure you were. Trying to pair me and Okako, Jiro and Kaminari. Trying to get Ken to admit that he appreciates his sister. Getting Fuku to finally love herself. At face value, these all sound like great things. Izuku sighed. However, once you actually think about them, you start to see why Amaya said they were so dangerous. What if, while under the influence of the candy, Jiro did something she wouldn't normally, and then heavily regretted it? Love is not an easy thing to handle emotion. And it can cause people to do stupid things. And even if anyone got together under the influence of the candies, would they stay together after the effects wore off? Would it damage their relationship if they tried getting together? Would it damage their relationship if they broke up after the effects wore off? How would one party feel if they knew the reason they got together with someone else is because that person was, essentially drugged into liking them more? Well, when you put it like that. Mina wilted under Izuku's logic, rubbing her arm sheepishly. Fuku just looked at the floor. And as for Ken, what if instead of confiding in his sister, he pushed her away even more? Ken has a tendency to react rashly, and had things gone in a slightly different relationship, it could have done some damage to his relationship with his sister, which would have seriously hurt him. Izuku continued. And as for Fuku, well, I'll be honest. I've considered using Amaya's quirk to do something like this with her before. It'd be nice if Fuku could appreciate herself. However, the ultimate issue with that is what happens when the effects wear off. Fuku enjoyed the feeling of loving herself so much, and she was absolutely crushed when I told her the effects weren't permanent. And it was a good thing I did find out, otherwise, she would have had to figure that out the hard way. Can you imagine how distraught she would have been, trying to figure out why she can't view herself in the same positive light anymore? Both Mina and Fuku winced, as they felt the guilt crushing them like a boulder. Fortunately, nothing too terrible happened. Ken's a bit miffed and he's gonna be upset with you two for a while. And Fuku's quite upset. But we can take some positives from this situation. Izuku revealed. Now I know a bit more about how Ken feels, which should offer good insight when I get him into therapy. And now that Fuku knows that she is capable of loving herself, she can work towards doing so without relying on Amaya's candy. Ultimately speaking, we're very lucky that this panned out in probably the best way it could have. But things could have gotten really bad if just a few things were different. Sorry, Daddy, Fuku apologized. I'm really sorry, boss. Mina also apologized. Don't apologize to me. Apologize to everyone you affected with this stunt, Izuku told them with a sigh. Although to be honest, I must take partial responsibility. I knew the dangers Amaya's candies could cause if used incorrectly, and I didn't explain them to everyone. As such, I'll also take the time to apologize to everyone, when I get the chance. Mina wanted to argue. This felt like something that was firmly her fault, but at the same time she wasn't really in a position to talk back, so she held her tongue. Alright, you two are dismissed, Izuku told them, sending them away. As Mina and Fuku left, Izuku sunk back into his chair. I should have figured something like this would happen. Well, at least I can use this as an example when I'm explaining why not to use Amaya's candies so freely. Well, back to work. And with that over, Izuku opened a file on his desk that he had been looking at. The file was for a young man. A therapist to be exact. He was a rising star in the mental health community, with his strange, yet effective quirk which he would use to help out his patients. It was far from conventional, and there was a warning that he couldn't work with anyone with suicidal thoughts or feelings, which made Izuku a bit hesitant. Still, he was quite curious, as apparently, he was able to help people with serious mental issues and roadblocks, overcome them in an astonishingly short amount of time. And from what he read, it was just a darn interesting quirk. one he'd love to see in action. Which was why he would be undergoing a session with the man before he sent any of the children. Just to make sure this was actually safe. Ren Akira, Izuku said the man's name out loud as he read over the information. Hopefully, you'll be able to help us out. We desperately need it. Author's note: so, some people wanted Mina to get a more serious punishment from Izuku. But it's Izuku. He doesn't really do serious punishment. Especially not for something like this, where ultimately the worst thing that happened was some people got really upset. As Izuku said, it could have gotten worse, but it's hard for someone like him to get overly upset about a hypothetical. Especially since he knows Mina and Shruku had no malicious intent. Mina didn't mean anyone any harm, she's just not very smart. Chapter 94, The Fool. Thank you for coming, Mr. Akira, Izuku said to the young man, sitting across from him. Izuku was currently in his office, with none other than the therapist known as Ren Akira. The two were in Izuku's office, sitting on the two couches with the table between them, drinking some coffee that Ren had brought along with him. No, please, the pleasure is all mine, Ren said, his voice as smooth as the coffee he brought. I have to say, I'm very much a fan of your work here. It's all rather remarkable. The man was by all means physically not too remarkable in most ways. His short black hair wasn't exactly uncommon, and his thinner frame didn't seem too impressive. However, he had a rather attractive face that worked well with his glasses, and his outfit, consisting of mostly black clothing with some red thrown in, suited him very well. Not to mention the man was dripping in confidence and moved with a laid-back elegance that was rather charming. I'm glad you think so, Izuku told him cheerfully, before taking a sip of the coffee. The moment the brew hit his tongue, his eyes widened. This is amazing. This is the best coffee I've ever had. I'm sure it is, Ren said confidently, taking a sip of his own coffee. I run a coffee shop on the side. It's called Arsene. I'm surprised I never heard of it. Considering how good the coffee is. Izuku told him, taking another sip. Honestly, it must be pretty hard being a therapist and running a coffee shop. Ren gave a deep laugh, that almost sounded faintly sinister. That's a riot coming from you. Considering you literally went to the hospital for overworking yourself. I dare say you've had more on your plate than I've ever had. And that's saying a lot. Right, I've heard you were falsely accused once, and that it took you quite some time to get acquitted, Izuku said, giving him a sympathetic look. I'm so sorry, that must have been difficult for you. Ren shrugged, like the worst part of his life was no big deal. You're not wrong. It was definitely a harrowing experience, but one I'm ultimately glad I went through. Once everything was said and done, I walked away a different man. A better man. But, we're not here to talk about me. No, the opposite actually. I believe it's time for us to get started. I suppose you're right, Izuku nodded, putting down the coffee and giving Ren a confused look. So do we just get right into it? Not quite. My quirk isn't something you just dive into. It can be both painful and even deadly if it's used improperly. Ren warned. First, I'll start with a detailed explanation of my quirk. I know I have an explanation about it on the website, but I'm going to go through it again, just to make sure you know exactly what you're getting into. Alright, that seems smart, Izuku said, regretting his recklessness. My apologies. It's no problem, Ren told him. Now, my quirk is called the Velvet Room. It allows me to connect my mind to others via sleep. All I need to do is sleep anywhere within a 50-mile radius of my target, and I'll be able to enter their minds. Now, what my quirk does is that it physically manifests a material realm, inside a cognitive space, building a world out of your mind. Do you understand this so far? Pretty much, basically your quirk turns metaphorical aspects of myself and creates a world from them. So let's say that my mental issues would turn into some kind of monster. Izuku said, trying to understand as best he could. That's about right, Ren nodded. The mind, however, is too big and varied that creating one big world is beyond my quirk's capabilities. So what it will do is it will create various smaller worlds, based on certain aspects of your mind. Typically memories of places of importance to you, but through your own lens. I call these palaces. Because it sounds cool. These palaces are filled with people that you know or are acquainted with in some way, but once again they are through your own lens. They're going to act as how you view them to act. Some are harmless, and some are incredibly hostile and will attempt to harm you. I call these shadows, and they're the reason I don't work with suicidals. You see, for the most part, even if your mind is hostile towards you, let's say you have a persecution complex, and you constantly blame yourself, the shadows in your mind will attack you, but it's still your mind, and so long as you don't want to die, they won't kill you. I figured that might be the case. Izuku had done his own speculation on Ren's quirk, and it looked like some of his theories had been correct. And then of course there is the ruler shadow. Ren continued. AKA, you. The ruler shadow is, as you can probably imagine, a version of yourself, a fragment so to speak, of you that runs a palace. Think of them as monarch. The monarch dictates the entire reality of the palace. If something were to change about the monarch, that would be reflected in the palace. If the monarch dies, then the whole palace will cease to exist. And what happens to the person in real life if you kill the monarch? Izuku asked. No idea. Ren shrugged. Given that it's part of someone's brain, it's probably not good. As such, I haven't tried it. I'm sure you can tell that my quirk is not something I can just screw around with. If I mess around I could seriously harm someone's, maybe even kill them. Not to mention I'd be hard to find some to volunteer to let me do experiments in their brains. And entering people's minds without persimmon is not something I'm willing to do. Izuku nodded. I guess it's best someone like you got this quirk rather than someone with more standards. You couldn't really hurt too many people with it before the police catch you. But you could definitely get away with ruining one person's brain, and probably their entire life. Ren said. Now what you want to do when you enter a palace with hostile shadows, is fight against the shadows, and overcome the monarch. So, how does fighting in that palaces work? Izuku asked. Well, strength in palaces is typically indicated by willpower, Ren explained. The stronger your willpower, the more powerful you are. Of course, your actual abilities in the palaces are dictated by your abilities in real life. Mostly quirks, but as someone without a quirk, I'm curious to see how it will affect you. So am I. Izuku's mind was running wild with all sorts of possibilities about how his quirk may work in tandem with his own mind and lack of quirk. He couldn't deny, he was kind of eager to just jump into it. Now then, I need to ask you. Do you have any suicidal thoughts or feelings? Ren asked him, seriously. I've read your file, as well as your physiological profile. And I have to say, I have my doubts. Just under a year ago, you were seriously depressed, you didn't even leave your house. And you were on the verge of being placed on the suicide watch list. And while a lot of things have changed in that time, it's highly possible that those feelings still linger. And I don't want to risk sending you to your death. Izuku paused, taking a few moments to think, before giving his response. Back then, I had almost nothing. My dream was crushed and I just didn't feel like I had a reason to live. I spent my whole life with only one goal in mind. My whole life. It just felt like my whole life was pointless. If things had gone on like that for much longer, those thoughts may have crossed my mind. Given enough time I may have even actually done it or at least tried. But that all changed when I met Eri. People like to say that I saved Eri that day, but in reality, she was also saving me. I felt like I had a purpose again. Like there was a reason for me to exist. And the more kids that came into my life, just confirmed that this, what I'm doing now, was my reason to live, taking care of children, ensuring their happiness, and making sure they have a bright future. was what I was meant to do. Even if it wasn't what I originally wanted. I won't lie, I have a hard time when it comes to thinking about my own health, which lead to my collapse. But after seeing the aftermath of that incident, I could never dream of allowing that again. I may not value my own life all that much, but the people I care about do. And so I would never dream of hurting them like that. I swear. The two of them stared at each other for a while, looking into each other's eyes, testing Izuku's resolve. Eventually, Ren smiled and leaned back before taking a sip of coffee. Very well then. I think it's time we moved on to the next part. Ren then took out some pills from his pocket. Now, we can start using my quirk. Izuku took 2 pills and held them up to his face. So I'm assuming this is to put us to sleep? To put you to sleep. I've learned how to force myself to sleep by now. It's kind of a really useful skill when you have a quirk like mine. Ren smirked. For multiple people to enter into the palaces, you have to be touching me while my quirk is active. And you have to be sleeping too. Ah, I see, Izuku said. Alright. Let's begin. Izuku took the pills, and the two of them laid down on the floor, with Izuku touching Ren's shoulder. He closed his eyes, and let the pills do their thing. When Izuku opened his eyes, all he saw was velvet. He was in a cafe that was entirely covered in velvet. The walls, the booths, the stools, the ceiling. Everything. The sounds of a piano and a woman singing could be heard through the whole cafe, but he couldn't find the source of the music. Izuku was currently sitting on one of the velvet stools, at the velvet bar, under the velvet lighting. And in front of him was a small girl, looking slightly older than Kin or Nara. She had long blonde hair and wore a velvet hairband that matched her almost completely velvet outfit, with only some hints of black to spice it up. She stared at him kindly with her golden yellow eyes and gave him a soft smile. Greetings, Izuku Midoriya. Welcome to the Velvet Room ... Huh? Izuku was more than a little confused right now. He felt a hand touch his right shoulder, and he looked over to see Ren on the stool right next to him. I told you my quirk creates a bridge between my mind and yours. This is that bridge. Ren explained. The Velvet Room. Oh, that explains the name of your quirk. Izuku said, realization washing over him before he curiously looked around the room. Although why is it velvet? And why a cafe? I assume that has something to do with your own cafe. But who is this? Ah, how rude of me. I have yet to introduce myself. The girl said, before giving him a curtsy. My name is Lavenza. I am the embodiment of Velvet Room itself. I am what you call a sentient quirk. Organizing the human mind into a plethora of palaces, shadows, monarchs, is a bit too complicated for a human to properly do, Ren explained. As such, my quirk needs to have its own mind to do that. Hence Lavenza. Fascinating, Izuku said, taking another look at the whole place. One thing he noted in particular was 2 doors. One at the front of the cafe, where the exit would normally be in such a place. And a back door at the end. But why is everything velvet? Because I like velvet, Lavenza explained. Like I said, Lavenza is the embodiment of the place, so naturally she has some element of control over it. Although my mind is what gives the place its shape, Lavenza can decide things like the color of everything, what decorations get put up, etc. Ren explained. And it's been covered in velvet for as long as I can remember. I'm really not sure why she loves this color so much though. We all have things about us that we don't understand. Like how you can eat so much curry and coffee despite what it does to your insides. Lavenza told him. Anyway, we should probably get going now, Ren said, quickly changing the topic. Since this is pretty much a dream world, time here passes differently. So we have plenty of time. But still, it's best if we do what came here to do. Very well. Lavenza politely bowed, before gesturing towards the back door. I've already picked out a rather troublesome palace. It will be beneficial to clear this one, but it shouldn't be too overwhelmingly difficult for a newcomer. Perfect? You're as great at your job as ever, Lavenza. Ren complimented her. Considering it is my only job, it would be rather shameful of me to perform any less than perfect, Lavenza told him. Not true, you keep me company when I'm bored. Ren smirked at her, before patting her on the head. Lavenza smiled at him fondly. That's not a job, it is my pleasure. Izuku watched the whole exchange awkwardly, feeling like he was kind of intruding on the moment. Lavenza noticed this and backed away. It appears our guest is begging to feel uncomfortable. I'd say he's been more than patient. Ah, sorry, Ren said, apologizing to Izuku before he got off the stool. Seems I got carried away. Well, shall we finally get going? Okay, Izuku said, getting off the stool, and following Ren towards the door. He turned to Lavenza and gave her a quick bow. Thank you for your help. It is of no bother to me. I am just glad to be of service. Lavenza said. Alright, one last warning before we go. This isn't gonna be painless. Even you won't die, you'll be confronted by your own inner demons given physical form. And at the end of the day, you will need to be the one to overcome them. Are you ready? Ren asked him. Izuku gave him a look of determination. Absolutely. Well then. Let's go. Ren said. He opened the door, which let off a bright glowing light. The two walked in, and the door closed behind them. Author's note, so yeah, as many of you figured out, this was inspired by Persona 5. Which I am a big fan of. And since Ren will be a recurring character, you're going to see more references to Persona 5 throughout the story. Chapter 95, School of Rathaldry Junior High School. Izuku let out a deep sigh as stared at the gates to his old school. In hindsight, I should have seen this coming. Ren walked up next to him, but he looked different. His outfit had completely changed. Now he wore a black ankle-length tailcoat, a high-necked waistcoat, with gold accents, cinched black pants, brown black-heeled boots, and pair of red gloves. Over his face was a white domino mask, with some black designs on it. What happened to your clothes? Izuku stared at him in shock. It's a cognitive realm. With a strong enough will, you can do things you can't in reality, including changing your clothes. Ren gave him a devilish grin. I look good, don't I? I mean, yeah. Izuku admitted, getting over his shock and taking the time to admire Ren's outfit, much to the man's delight. It looks like a hero costume. It basically is. After all, I'm about to dive headfirst into danger, fighting off evil to save someone. Isn't that basically what a hero does? Ren pointed out. Well, you're not wrong. Izuku agreed, before looking at the gate, and felt anxiety flood him once more. So, do we just go in? Are you ready? Ren asked him. Because once we go in there, the fighting is going to begin. How do I fight? Izuku looked down at himself. He didn't go through an outfit change like Ren, he was still wearing his Aegis cloak. And he didn't feel any stronger. You said it was about willpower, but it's not something you just feel at the start. You have to summon it. Ren took a step back. Watch. Persona. Suddenly, a pillar of black flames erupted from behind him, and from it came what Izuku could only describe as some kind of fallen angel. It was about 3 times the size of a normal person, with a very thin, slender body, and long arms and legs. From head to toe, it was covered in red and black. With some white ruffles, it wore a very tall top hat, on top of a black mask with long horns that pointed forward, and the mask also seemed to be its face, as it didn't seem to have a head. It wore a very 18th century themed suit, with a popped collar, and some stitched heart designs on the shoulders, and of course those white ruffles on its chest. It also had very sharp heels. They were more like daggers attached to its boots. Lastly, it had huge black wings coming out of its back, with feathers loosely attached to them. Overall, it was a very intimidating creature, so much so that Izuku took a step back from Ren and the beast while staring at them in awe. This is our scene. He is what I call a persona. Ren explained. Essentially, it takes your will and forms it into a solid being to fight by your side and empower you, which allows you to fight back here. Interesting. I wonder why it works like that? Izuku said, his mind filled with theories once more. Probably because I read too much JoJo's. Ren shrugged. Oh. Guess that makes sense, Izuku responded. So how do I summon one? Well you'll figure it out, Ren said, unsummoning our scene. I'd like to be less vague, but, let's just say, it's something you need to do without someone holding your hand. It's a part of the process. Alright. Then I guess we should go in now, Izuku said, looking back at the gate unassuredly. On the other side, he could see people in his school uniform, but he couldn't see their faces. So how do we get? Before Izuku could even finish his question, the gates swung open. You're a student here, remember? Or at least you were. Ren told him. Of course, you're allowed in. Izuku walked towards the school, stopping just before he passed the gate completely, with Ren right beside him. He took a deep breath, and he stepped onto school grounds. And at that moment, everything changed. The gates slammed closed at an absurd speed, the metal doors slamming together so hard the sound resonated through the whole school. Ding dong! Rang the school's bell. All the faceless students suddenly turned their heads towards him, and grins grew where there once wasn't even a mouth, and they all began laughing. Laughing at him. Now Izuku really felt like he was back at middle school. The feeling of dread grew stronger within him, as he started to sweat, and his heart rate increased a little. None of it's real. You're not a student here anymore. Izuku reminded himself, as he and Ren walked down the main path. You know, this isn't the first time I've gone through this exact situation, Ren told him. Schools are breeding grounds for this kind of trauma. I would know. This isn't dissimilar to my own school experience. Izuku nodded. He knew that, of course. It's one of the many reasons he didn't entertain the notion of the kids going to a public school, and instead choose to school them privately. So what do we do now? Well, first, we should probably get ready to deal with the shadows following us, Ren said, glancing behind him. Izuku turned his head and saw 3 shadow students walking up behind him. Hey Deku, said one of the students. You just gonna walk past us? Who told you that you could just walk past us without saying hello? Suddenly, pillars of darkness erupted from the ground, circling the two of them, and when the darkness subsided, there were more grinning students, now surrounding them. About 8 in front of them, and 8 behind him. The shadows started closing in on them, and Ren took a fighting stance, summoning a knife and pistol, with that same dark energy he summoned Arsene with, and then going back to back with Izuku. You take the half on your side. I'll take the ones on mine. But I don't know how to fight here yet, Izuku pointed out. As I said, you'll figure it out, Ren said, before running towards his opponents. One of the students tried to punch him, but Ren jumped up into the air, avoiding the blow, and shooting down at the shadow with his pistol. Blam! 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 3 bullets rained down into the shadow, 2 in each shoulder, and 1 in the foot, leaving holes in the shadow that emitted darkness. Although notably, it didn't die. Ren landed behind the group of shadows and started unloading his clip into all of them. As they charged at him, another took a swing at him, but Ren ducked under the attack and stabbed it in the chest, staggering it, but running the knife through his side, and then spinning around, getting a couple feet away and then shooting it in the head. Ag! The shadow groaned as it fell to the ground, and finally died. Its body fading to nothing. Ren blew away the smoke coming out of his gun's barrel and then turned to face the rest of the shadows. 1 down, 7 to go. Meanwhile, Izuku was not having such a good time. One of the shadows charged at Izuku and got ready to punch him in the face. Izuku deflected the punch, using what little martial arts skills he picked up from Ojiro, and tried to counter-punch him in the head. only for the shadow to tank the attack, with seemingly no damage done to him. Izuku's eyes widened, and the shadow laughed again. "Hey! So useless," the shadow said, before punching Izuku in the gut. Izuku sputtered, as the blow knocked the wind out of him, and sent him flying back, rolling across the ground. Ugh! Why did that hurt so much? Izuku wondered as he tried to pull himself up. "I have the Aegis cloak that Shulden''T. Right. This isn't reality. This isn't the real Aegis cloak, and they aren't real, normal people. The cloak won't save me. I have to summon the will to fight." Izuku got back up and faced the 8 shadows. He tried to summon his willpower, steel himself to fight back. But nothing happened. One of the shadows dashed at him, and grabbed his arm, before throwing him over to the others. Izuku grunted in pain as he hit the ground, but it was far from over, as one of the shadows picked him up, and held him by his arms, locking him in place. The greenet tried to struggle out of the hold, but to no avail. "Ah! Let me go." All of them just laughed, as the other shadows closed in on him. "Did puny Deku really think he could fight back?" said one in front of him, before it punched him in the stomach. Izuku cried out in pain. "You'll always be a defenseless loser," said one to his left, before punching him in the cheek. "Gah! There's no point in you existing," said another one to his right, before punching him the opposite cheek. "Ag!" The shadows continued to beat on him. Meanwhile, Ren finished shooting another shadow dead, while another shadow student ran up behind him. Arsene. In a pillar of flame, Arsene appeared behind him and knocked the shadow back with its claw, before snapping its finger and shooting out a small flame at the shadow. The flame hit the shadow, and then it burst into a giant flaming pillar, incinerating the shadow in black fire. With those 2 shadows dead, Ren turned to Izuku and saw he was doing poorly. "Is this it? Is this the limit of your resolve?" I can't," Izuku thought as he received another blow to the face. "I want to fight back, but I don't know what I'm doing. It's just like before. Nothing's changed." HMPH. "Is this the example you want to set for your children?" Ren asked coldly, as he shot an approaching shadow in the head. "Is this how you want them to see you? All your children want you to be happy. And these people are standing in your way. Are you going to let them take the happiness you strive to give them?" Izuku grit his teeth, and looked up at the shadows once more. "My kids. What would they do if they saw me like this? So weak." He could imagine it now. Kandiri with a horrified expressions on their faces. Kiba and Kyaku looking on in rage. Fuka crying. All of them. They were so sad when he'd fallen ill. "I'm so pathetic," Izuku thought as he clenched his fist. Rage building up inside him. Rage at his own weakness. Damn it. I can't let myself be weak anymore. I have too many people to look after for me to just be a doormat. "What are muting, you loser?" said the shadow in front of him. Izuku looked at the shadow, his eyes glowing green. "I need you to get out of my way." Suddenly, Izuku's body exploded, in a burst of green flame. All the shadows got knocked away, except for the one holding him. As the flames died down, Izuku was revealed once more. He was still wearing the Aegis cloak, but different. The black parts were now green, and the white bony parts were now black. His hood was up now, but instead of the blank darkness that was usually seen whenever the hood was up, 2 glowing, green eyes were visible. "Huh?" The shadow holding him grunted in confusion, but suddenly another pillar of green flame appeared behind him. This time, a figure emerged. A tall, hulking figure, made of dark green fire and holding a club with sharpened stones jutting out of it. "Get off me." Izuku finally broke free of the shadow's grip, and the green figure then slammed its weapon down on the shadow, splitting it in 2 and killing it. "Tch. Don't get cocky, Deku," said one of the shadows, as they all started to get back up. "Just because you got a lucky hit, doesn't make you strong." Izuku shook his head. Weakness is not something I can afford anymore. The happiness of those close to me depends on me being strong enough to carry their burdens. So no matter what, Rag, the figure behind him, roared, I'll pretend to be strong and smash everything that tries to hurt me or my kids. Izuku shouted. Get him. The shadows shouted, as all the shadows charged at him. Smash them all. Izuku summoned a pair of brass knuckles around his fist. The flames around the figure behind him died down, revealing a colossal man, bigger than even All Might, with gray skin and long, black hair, wearing only 4 metal bands on his wrist and ankles, and a metal skirt. Heracles. Heracles rushed forward at alarming speeds, and swiped his weapon at 3 of him, slicing clean through them and taking them out instantly. 2 of them tried to rush past Heracles to attack Izuku, but Heracles grabbed one of them by the head and crushed their skull. The other one rushed at Izuku and tried to punch him, but Izuku caught the punch, and returned it, socking the shadow across the face. And this time, it sends the shadow flying back and skidding across the ground, where Heracles then proceeded to stomp them to death. Izuku looked at the last 2 shadows, who were cowering in fear. Teacher!" shouted one of the shadows. "Teacher!" Suddenly, the doors to the school burst open, and out came a faceless man, in a plain white shirt and plaid pants, wearing a black tie. "What's going on here?" Izuku grit his teeth, knowing exactly what was going to happen next. "Midoriya started attacking us for no reason." The shadow students lied, their fearful expressions turning into horrid grins. The shadow teacher looked at Izuku. "The quirkless boy is starting trouble." Well, suddenly, the teacher's body started to convulse and change shape. It started to grow, becoming as tall as a small house, its teeth becoming sharp and jagged, as its hand turned into claws. "I think he needs to be punished," the teacher said in a distorted, nightmarish voice. "I'll put you in your place." Izuku looked up at the monstrous teacher. He'd felt just as small as he did back then. "Don't let it get to you, Izuku. You can't afford to be that small ever again." Ren came up beside him. "You ready?" "Yeah." Izuku nodded, getting into a battle stance. "I'm good. You dare raise your hand against me?" The teacher roared, shouting so loud, the force of his yell actually pushed Izuku and Ren back a bit, both to them needing to guard their faces. The teacher crouched down, and lunged at them, moving at incredible speeds towards Izuku, with his hand outstretched. "Heracles!" Izuku shouted, summoning the massive man in front of him, who stopped the teacher where he stood, holding his hand open and keeping them from reaching Izuku. Ren jumped up and summoned Arsene, who proceeded to shoot out a dark energy blast right at the teacher's face. "Rag!" The teacher roared in pain, his head being pushed to the right. Izuku ran over to the side, moving at superhuman speeds, getting right under the teacher's head, before jumping up and uppercutting the massive shadow. "Gah! Why, you little..." The teacher got up and took a few steps back, before raising its foot up, and stomping the ground so hard, it caused a small earthquake, destroying the front of the school and causing the ground to fracture. Izuku jumped up, to avoid the attack, leaping higher humanly possible into the air. Once the shockwave attack finished, Izuku and Ren landed in the destroyed yard. Izuku summoned Heracles, who rushed at the teacher and swung his weapon at the teacher's leg, cutting halfway through it. Heracles roared, as he kept pushing his weapon deeper into the leg, pushing it further and further through the appendage. "Get off me!" The shadow shouted, raising its fist up to slam it down into Heracles. "Not on my watch," Ren said, summoning Arsene behind him and unloading a crap ton of bullets, that were coated in Arsene's dark energy, right into the teacher's face. "Gah!" The teacher covered its face with its hand to protect it from the bullet, which gave Izuku a chance to jump forward and punch its other hand away from Heracles. Roar! Heracles used all his strength, and gave one great push, cleaving through the leg completely, and sending the teacher falling to the ground. "Now, let's finish him," Ren shouted. Right. Izuku agreed. Heracles. The colossal man leaped up, super high into the air, before kicking off the air, propelling itself downward at top speed, with its weapon aimed right at the teacher's head. Slam. Heracles' attack connected, his weapon stabbing the teacher right in the face, hitting him so hard that it forced the man deeper into the ground, creating a huge crater. "Why, you are going to the principal's office," the teacher said before it began to fade away into nothing. Once the teacher was gone, the two of them breathed a sigh of relief. Okay, so now what? Before Izuku could even finish his sentence, he was on his knees. The adrenaline was wearing off, and suddenly he was hit with a wave of exhaustion, so strong it was hard not to pass out here and now. "What? It's a part of my quirk's drawback. The longer you're in here, the more exhausted you get," Ren told him, helping Izuku up, and putting one of his arms over his shoulder, to help him walk. "It gets worse the more you exert yourself. Especially when you're new. Come on, let's get out of here." "But we didn't even make it to the school yet," Izuku protested, as Ren turned him around and walked him to the gate. "That happens a lot. No one tends to make it very far on their first visit," Ren explained. "Don't worry. You did great." Izuku didn't have the energy to object any further and allowed Ren to drag him outside of the schoolyard. Izuku opened his eyes and instantly recognized that the exhaustion had not gone away. "Oh." Ren got off the ground, doing a few stretches afterward. "Well, that was a very productive first session." The young therapist offered Izuku a hand, and the teen accepted it, allowing Ren to pull him up. "Doesn't feel like it," Izuku grunted, feeling phantom pains from all the hits he took in the cognitive realm. "Healing the mind is not an easy process," Ren told him. "Far from it. It's hard, and sometimes it'll feel like you're not making much progress at all. My quirk doesn't change that. It just makes the process much faster. In exchange for being a lot more painful." "Yeah, I suppose so," Izuku said. "I think I'll hold off on having you do anything with the kids until we clear Palace and see the effects." "Of course. That's perfectly understandable," Ren told him. "For now, you should take some time to rest." "All right. Thank you for your time," Izuku said, smiling at the man. "And thank you for letting me feel strong. Like, physically." "It was my pleasure," Ren said, flashing him a grin. Author's note: okay, so that was the first therapy chapter. As you can see, it's a pretty massive Persona reference. Now some of you are probably wondering about Heracles. Yes, that was also a Fate reference. I mixed a Persona reference and a Fate reference at the same time. I felt Heracles fit Izuku pretty well. Heroic, ignoring all the terrible stuff that very ancient hero did, hated from birth for something he couldn't control, hated by Hera for being born, etc. Chapter 96. Short 16. Frog vs. Fish. Are you ready? Tsu and Ken stood at the edge of a nearby lake. Tsu in her hero costume, and Ken in his usual outfit. "I was born ready." Ken smirked, both excitement and overconfidence showing on his face, as he held up his watch. "Alrighty then. Transform, and let's begin," Tsu told him. Ken happily complied. In a flash of green light, Ken transformed into the human-like fish monster, Ripjaws. And without any further ado, the two jumped into the lake, Ken's legs transforming into a fishtail once he was underwater. They both swam with ease, although Tsu swam noticeably faster and with more ease. Having far more experience than Ken, the two of them then swam to the opposite sides of the lake, before staring down each other. Ken gave her a nod, and then Tsu gave him a nod back. And so the fight began. Ken immediately rushed towards her, ready to go on the attack, while Tsu waited patiently for him to approach. When Ken reached her, he tried to swipe at her, but Tsu ducked underneath the claw swipe and maneuvered herself so she could deliver a devastating double kick to the face. Ken's head got knocked back, and he was dazed for a moment. but he didn't even get the chance to recover before Tsu kicked him in the side of the head, knocking him away, although not very far, seeing as they were underwater. Man, those legs hurt, Ken thought to himself, as he shook his head to try and recover from Tsu's attack. And when he stopped seeing stars, he looked back at where Tsu was, only to see she wasn't there anymore. Where did she? And then Tsu delivered an axe kick the top of his head, sending him down to the bottom of the lake. Ow! Ken cried, rubbing his now very bruised head, before looking up to see Tsu swimming away from him. Alright. I'm gonna make you regret that. The 10-year-old swam after the frog girl as fast as he could to catch up. After swimming for a bit, Ken started to catch up to her, but this was just as Tsu planned. The moment Ken tried to reach for her leg, Tsu flipped, positioning herself over his head, and then double-stomped his skull, sending him flying back down towards the bottom of the lake. "Can you do anything but kick me in the head?" Ken asked her. Although Tsu couldn't respond, as she couldn't speak underwater. The fight continued like this for quite a while, with Ken getting kicked around the lake, Tsu evading and countering at every turn. Grrr. That's it! Ken shouted at Tsu, after getting kicked back down to the lake's floor. Ken charged at Tsu, with his massive jaws open. He figured if Tsu was so strong, she'd be fine if he went all out. But Tsu didn't move, because she knew the fight was already over. Brrr. Huh? Ken stopped his charge halfway and looked at his Omnitrix, which was now blinking red. What? Already? Brrr. Suddenly, Ken was wrapped up in Tsu's tongue, and she spun him around vertically. Brrr. This flung Ken upwards and launched him out of the lake and into the air. Oomph! Ken grunted as he hit the ground at the edge of the lake. Brrr. In a flash of red, Ken was transformed back to normal and was lying face down in the dirt. Splash! Tsu leaped out of the water, landing right next to Ken, who was pulling himself up, and gave the frog girl an annoyed expression. "I'd say I won here, Karo," Tsu said. Did you have to kick me in the head so many times?" Ken grunted, clutching his head. "I'm guessing that Ripjaws is the transformation you use the least," Tsu said, making an educated guess. "Well duh. He's only useful in water." Ken rolled his eyes. "That's a problem. Because Ripjaws may be the transformation you need to work on the most," Tsu told him. "Why? Not too many villains are committing crimes at sea," Ken said, giving her a confused look. "There are more sea-based villains than you'd think," Tsu told him. "Ripjaws may only be useful underwater, but are any of your other forms nearly as useful underwater?" "I mean, no," Ken admitted. "Right, and if you want to be the #1 hero, you have to play to your main strength. Varsity," Tsu reminded him. "You'll never be as strong as Kiba, but Kiba can't breathe underwater. That means if you get better with Ripjaws, you'll be able to beat villains in places someone like Kiba can't. Those are points that could lead to you becoming #1 in the future." Ken pondered this. "I guess you're right. Not to mention, if you're fighting someone as Ripjaws underwater, and you're timed out, you're screwed, Karo," Tsu reminded him. "At least if you time out on land, you might still be able to get away from the fight and wait until you can use your quirk again. But if you time out underwater, you're just gonna die." Ken thought about that for a second before cringing. On second thought, yeah, I definitely need to practice with Ripjaws more. "Thanks. Just doing my job, Karo," Tsu said, rustling Ken's hair, much to his annoyance. Super Ida was currently washing a mountain of dishes when Ken came up to him. "Hey, Ida. I just had the best idea ever," Ken said, looking up at him with a big grin on his face, before pulling up his Omnitrix. "Let's hope this works." "Wait. What are you?" Ida was cut off by a green flash, as Ken turned into upgrade, and started approaching him. "Young man, what are you?" Suddenly, Ken's amorphous body came onto Ida and started merging with him, spreading up his own body, until everything below Ida's neck looked like upgrade. "What on earth?" Ida felt so strange. His whole body was tingling and he was extremely confused. "All right," Ken said, his voice coming out of the Omnitrix signal on Ida's chest. "It worked." "What worked? What's happening?" Ida said, waving his arms frantically in a panic. "Relax. You know how upgrade can merge with technology and upgrade it?" Ken reminded him. "Well, I thought, Ida has machines in his body. So what if I used upgrade on him?" "I see. That is quite clever. However, I must insist that next time you ask for consent next time you do such things." Ida scolded him. "Yeah, sorry about that," Ken said, not sounding all that apologetic. "But hey, let's go take this form a spin." "But the dishes." Ida's protest fell on deaf ears, as Ken moved his body for him, forcing him towards the outside. "No time. We only have 10 minutes, remember," Ken told him, as they left the kitchen area. "But the dishes," Ida cried in despair, as he was forced to move on. Vroom. Ida sped around the track, much faster than he'd ever moved before. So fast that Ida was actually having trouble handling the wind smashing against his face. "This is incredible. But also nauseating," Ida shouted as he rushed around the track. "I'm moving at max speed with no issue, and my engines aren't overheating at all. It's incredible." "I know, right?" Ken said, laughing like a madman. "Man, this is awesome. Hey, let's see how far we'll get if we jump." "Wait, what?" Ida questioned. Suddenly, Ida's jets went into overdrive, and he flew into the air so fast he appeared to be a blur, going high into the sky over the forest. "This is a terrible idea," Ida screamed as he flew through the air, terror filling his voice. "This is an amazing idea. I've never flown this fast before," Ken yelled, his voice filled with excitement. "How are we going to land?" Ida asked. "Oh," was Ken's response, now sounding far less enthusiastic. Whoops, as Ida's forward moment started to waver, the two of them began to fall down towards the lake. "I'm telling Midoriya." Splash. Fortunately, Ida and Ken were rescued by a sea along, and Ken was promptly scolded and put in timeout for the rest of the day. Game on. KO player 1 wins. Darn it. Netsu pouted, as he saw his character, Endeavor, fall to the ground in defeat. "Ha! I win. Again." Ken gloated, celebrating his victory with his character, Headshot. The two of them were playing Hero Tournament 11. A 2D fighting game in the same vein as Street Fighter, but starring pro heroes. It was a game the two often played together. "You're really good at this game, Ken," Netsu said, looking at Ken with awe, and stroking his ego. "Of course I am. As if I'd be beat at my favorite game," Ken gloated. While Ken was basking in his victory, Amaya and Yami walked into the room. "Hello." Amaya greeted everyone with a bright smile. "Oh hey Amaya." Netsu greeted her. "Hey," Ken responded casually. "I came over to play," Amaya explained, walking around the couch, to see what they were playing, and her eyes lit up. "Oh, is this Hero Tournament 11? I love this game." "Really?" Ken gave her a skeptical look. Not expecting someone who looks like her to be into games, let alone serious fighting games. "Oh no." Yami sighed, knowing exactly where this was going. "Yeah. I love the mechanics, and how tight the controls are," Amaya gushed. "And it has a wide character selection, with no lame clones." Ken grinned, sensing a more entertaining opponent. "Oh yeah, wanna play around? You don't mind, do you, Netsu?" "Nah. It's fine. I wanna see if she's as good as you," Netsu said, eagerly disconnecting his special fireproof controller, so Amaya could use a regular one. "PSH. Doubt it," Ken said cockily. "Oh? Hee. Amaya giggled sinisterly, as she looked down, her eyes hidden by shadows. "Here we go," Yami said, taking a step back. Amaya grabbed the sides of her dress and threw it into the air, off of her body. What? Ken was taken aback by this sudden stripping of clothing out of nowhere, but was relieved to see that Amaya was wearing a red tracksuit underneath her dress, for some reason. Amaya then, quick as can be, took out a hair tie, and tied her hair into a ponytail, before taking out a red headband, and wrapping it around her forehead. Lastly, she took out a pair of glasses and put them on. Amaya Shinkaku mode activated. Amaya shouted, doing a flashy pose. Whoa! She transformed. Netsu gasped. She didn't form, she just changed her clothes really quickly. Ken said, taking slight offense to calling that a transformation. Also, why were you wearing a tracksuit under your dress? I am always ready for a challenge. Amaya said, getting on the couch and grabbing a controller. Now shut up and play, nerd. Whoa. What's the personality shift? Ken asked, throwing Amaya a bewildered look. This Amaya's other half. Gaming form. Yami explained. She liked this whenever someone fight her in video game. Lots intense. Why she had no friends before met me. HMPH. Not my fault the scrubs couldn't take the heat. Amaya responded, as she connected her controller, and got to the character select screen. So you're gonna stick with Headshot? Yeah? Ken answered, still confused by this new side of Amaya. Not bad. Fast character, decent damage. His frames are probably the best in the game. But he has some troubles winning natural, although his counter, crouch, and dash, make it really hard to hit him too. Not to mention his hitboxes are just dumb. Amaya summarized. Nice pick, 8-tier character. Amaya then proceeded to pick Endeavor. You sure you want to pick Endeavor? Ken asked confidently, giving her a smug look. Netsu just finished using him, and I kicked his butt. If you beat Endeavor with Headshot, then Tetsu's skills must be absolute garbage, Amaya said casually. Hey? Netsu shouted, taken aback by this sudden insult. Also, my name is Netsu. Let me show you how someone actually plays Endeavor, Amaya said, smirking wildly. The game started, and Ken immediately rushed forward with Headshot, rapidly attacking Endeavor, who guarded expertly, not taking a hit despite Headshot's relentless assault. What? Too scared to make a move? Ken chuckled, with Amaya not saying a word in response, completely focused on the game. As this was happening, Kiba walked into the room. Greetings siblings, I by the darkness. Ken, what are you doing? I'm kicking Amaya's butt. Ken said, still trying to get past Amaya's perfect guarding. At least I will be when I freaking hit her. Oh you poor fool, Kiba said, giving Ken a pitiful look. I too fell for her trap. Her first form is a deceptive ruse, waiting to ensnare you so she can reveal her true form. For you see, Amaya is actually a professional gamer. Downloaded. Amaya shouted. Time to go. Suddenly, Endeavor did a burst attack that flung Headshot away from them. Endeavor then jumped back, gaining some more distance from him, before firing off a fireball, and then as the fireball was traveling towards Headshot, Endeavor shot a fire blast upwards that started traveling down towards Headshot, and after that Endeavor crouched down and set the floor on fire. Ken was overwhelmed. He blocked the fireball, but not the flaming ground, which hit low and as such went around his standing block, causing him to get hit, and this was the start of Ken zoning hell. The screen was covered in fire, Endeavor throwing around flames like there was no tomorrow, and Ken only managed to block a few attacks, before getting hit by something from the other side of the screen. And anytime Ken tried to get in close, Headshot would just get a flash fire fist to the face, or run into a hell spider attack. KO player 2 wins. Headshot was down in no time. GG as, Amaya said, cracking her fingers and doing some stretches. How? Ken gaped like a fish. I would have perfected you, but I needed to learn your playstyle first, Amaya told him. Didn't want to get tagged by a filthy casual. Better to sacrifice the perfect to chip shield damage. As I said, she's not just any typical gamer. She's a pro, Try-hard gamer. Kiba explained. She's even won tournaments. Oh really? Netsu said, looking at Amaya in awe. Amaya smiled smugly. Yup. One day I'm gonna be a real pro. I'm gonna win the big leagues, and do gaming as a job. You can do that? Ken asked, looking at her wide-eyed. The big tournaments pay lots of cash. So I could make boatloads of money by playing games. Amaya explained, before giving Ken a smug look. But I don't think it's the kind of thing for scrubs like you, Ren. Okay. First, my name is Ken. Ken responded angrily. And, second, you only won one game. Don't think you're so much better than me. Oh? You wanna go for round 2? Amaya offered confidently. That poor soul. Kiba shook her head, before looking at Yami. You wanna get some popcorn so we can watch this massacre properly? Yami shrugged. Okay. And so it began. For the next hour or so, Amaya continued to absolutely destroy Ken, in every single way imaginable. Perfecting him in every round. After zoning him out for a few rounds, Ken decided to switch to All Might and try to brute force his way through Endeavor's zoning with super armor. Not a bad strategy. But unfortunately, the gap in skill was too high. Every time All Might would get close to Endeavor, Endeavor would lock him in a combo, and knock him back. Then Amaya switched to Fatgam and countered him into the ground. And to rub salt in the wound, she'd been using a wash to beat his ass for the last 15 minutes. And she wasn't even looking at the screen. KO player 2 wins. Perfect? Rag. Ken screamed as he chucked his controller in rage. I had the exact same reaction, Kiba said, eating some popcorn alongside Yami. I know this humiliation well. It's just a game, guys. Yami shrugged, not understanding why everyone was so worked up. But his words fell on deaf ears. Are you tired of losing, Ben? Amaya asked him smugly, giving him the smuggest face he'd seen in his life. It's Ken. Ken shouted in rage, as he jumped on the couch. And yeah, I am. So I'm going to stop holding back. Ken raised his Omnitrix to his face and started selecting a form. And, in a flash of green, Ken turned into Upgrade. Ken then literally jumped into the console, merging with it. Give me a second. Oh? Amaya was curious to see what Ken had planned. The screen went dark for a minute, but when it came back on, the character select screen had one more character added. Ken himself, as Upgrade. Now that we have the best character in the game, why don't we see if you can beat me at my best, Ken said confidently. Is this cheating? Netsu asked, looking over towards Kiba and Yami, who both shrugged. Cheat character. Got it. Challenge accepted. Amaya said, feeling kind of excited at not knowing what to expect. She picked Endeavor, and Ken picked himself, and the match began. Immediately, in-game Ken used a move that gave him a full energy bar. Okay, so he's gonna be able to super attack and break combos whenever he wants, but every time he uses that he's gonna be open for 3 frames. Amaya thought, continuing to block. Then Upgrade stretched out its arms stupidly fast, grabbing Endeavor from the other side of the screen, and crushed them, instantly putting them at half health. Yeah, that's absolutely cheating, Kiba said, wondering how Amaya would react to this. Amaya was unfazed. Endeavor jumped into the air to dodge another grab, and threw 3 fireballs down at Upgrade, but Upgrade shot a laser up at Endeavor, which destroyed the fireball coming at him, and Endeavor barely blocked in time. Once Endeavor landed, he instantly started throwing out dozens of fire attacks, in an attempt to zone Upgrade once more, but then Upgrade turned into a puddle, and zipped under all of it, and did a low attack on Endeavor that he barely managed to block. Endeavor performed a grab, finally managing to land a hit on Upgrade, before throwing them away. And doing a bit of damage. Immediately after being thrown, Upgrade did a super move, shooting a massive laser out of his eye, that covered the entire screen. Once again Amaya's reaction time proved to be unmatched as she blocked it, However, it did so much chip damage that it killed her anyway. KO player 1 wins. Ah! I win. Ken gloated at his totally unfair victory. Amaya instantly pressed the rematch button. Huh? Ken was surprised Amaya would be so willing to fight that obviously broken character without complaint. It's not over until your quirk runs out of time, Amaya said, pushing up her glasses and tightening her headband, before giving Ken a confident smirk. So before then, I'm going to beat you. Ah! Bring it on! Ken challenged, as the next round began. As soon as the round started, Upgrade did his full bar move, and Endeavor stomped the ground, causing a pillar of fire to rise under them, and hit Ken, doing a bit of damage. Immediately, Ken did the super move, causing Upgrade to shoot out the massive, screen-filling laser. Seeing as Amaya couldn't block or dodge it, she only had one course of action. And so Amaya proceeded to parry the entire thing, timing it perfectly so she never took a bit of damage. What? Ken and Netsu shouted in shock. Of course, Ken knew it was possible to parry the beam. That's why he felt comfortable making it undodgeable and unblockable. He just didn't expect her to actually be able to do it. Yami and Kiba remained unfazed, having already witnessed Amaya's skills. Of course, Ken's shock left him open for an attack, and after parrying that huge attack, Amaya had plenty of meter. Prominence burn. Endeavor shouted as he did his ultimate move, shooting a massive beam of fire at Upgrade. Upgrade was now below half HP, and Ken was panicking. He was tempted to just cheat even more than he was already. But then what was even the point? This was to prove she wasn't as good of a gamer as she thought she was, and if he put her in a completely impossible situation, then that would just defeat the purpose. So he soldiered on. He shot out another super laser at her, hoping to catch her while Endeavor was recovering from his ultimate. However, Amaya barely managed to stay parrying in time, and then did another stomp attack, hitting Upgrade with a fire pillar, taking away more of Upgrade's HP. Upgrade then instantly teleported behind Endeavor, but Endeavor still proceeded to block it, as Amaya had expected him to give himself a teleport, and the moment she saw the animation, she reacted. Amaya was now stuck blocking Upgrade's combo though, and she was taking a ton of chip damage, so she had to do something, and quick. Which wasn't easy because Ken made all his moves plus on block. But she knew Ken didn't have the patience to wear her down like this, and inevitably, she was right, and she saw him going for a grab, and moved back, escaping from Upgrade, before unleashing a flash fire fist, burning some meter to lower its startup significantly and blast Ken away from him, while putting his HP in the red. Upgrade teleported behind Endeavor again and immediately used its massive laser, which Endeavor parried again. Out of desperation, Ken tried his command grab again, but Endeavor used his ultimate and blasted Upgrade to death. KO player 2 wins. Nah ooh. Ken shouted in despair. Ah! Get wrecked. Amaya cheered, smiling victoriously as she held her arms in the air. Whoa! She actually beat him. Netsu shouted in amazement, his fire flaring up. Most impressive. I'll admit even with her skills I was skeptical she could beat such a cheap character in such a short amount of time, but she really has outdone herself here. Kiba said, giving Amaya a soft applause. Thanks, Lady K, Amaya said. BRRR. 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 BRRRR. In a flash of red, Ken was no longer merged with the console, and no longer Upgrade. Damn it. I'll beat you one day. Ken swore, feeling absurdly frustrated. Sure you will, scrub, Amaya responded cockily, before she looked up and noticed something. Despite Ken no longer being merged with the console, the Upgrade character was still on the select screen. Wait. Can you just change game codes in seconds? Huh? Ken asked, before looking up to see his character still in game. Oh yeah. Any physical changes Upgrade makes to stuff is undone, but changing code is permanent. Wait. Kiba's eyes grew wide. Does that mean you can put anyone into a game? Including myself? Yeah. Ken took a second to think about that, and an idea popped into his head. For a price. If you want money? Why don't you just make a game? Amaya asked. And thus the room fell into dead silence, as the bomb had just been dropped. Amaya, Ken said, turning to her with dollar signs in his eyes. I take back every bad thing I said about you in my head. Guys. I'm making a video game. Author's note, and so that's another chapter done. I finally introduced Amaya's other half. So yeah, the kids are gonna make a game. That's gonna be a side plot for a while. Chapter 97, Game Plan. Inside Ken's room, a group of children had gathered. Of course, there was Ken himself, and his sister Nara. But along with them were, Iri, Kiba, Fu, Kota, Truku, Yami, Atoko, and Netsu. Fuku was also here, surprisingly enough, with her hoodie on of course, and she'd eaten a bit of Amaya's calm candies. Speaking of whom, Amaya was also present. Why were they all here? To plan a game of course. While Ken could handle the technical aspects of creating a game, he could use some help with the creative aspects. As such he went around asking everyone if they would be interested in helping him, and this is who he got. Alright. So here's what I have so far. Ken pitched. A handsome, incredibly talented man gets transported to a fantasy world that's being invaded by monsters ruled by a terrible demon king. And he must wield the Genesis Gauntlet, a gauntlet that lets him turn into different types of dragons, to stop him, and save the world. Nara rolled her eyes. You're not even being subtle that the main character is yourself. Insert. Well, it's my game. Why shouldn't I be the main character? Ken said, defending himself. Ken's ego aside, the premises isn't bad. Generic, but we can work with that. Kiba added. So long as we make me a queen. I wanted to be a princess, Iri said quietly. But I wanna be a king. Kota added. I wanna be a snake. Added, being as predictable as ever. Oh. Can I be Iri's pet snake? Like a huge snake that keeps her safe. I would like to be a handsome prince. Read a piece of paper that Izuku held up. Wait a minute. Ken shouted. Not everyone can royalty here. Maybe they can? Fuku spoke up and instantly regretted it as now all the attention was on her. Well, if we have multiple kingdoms then we can make everyone who wants to be royalty. And I was also thinking maybe we could tie that into the Genesis Gauntlet. If it lets you turn into elemental dragons, maybe we could make it so it uses dragon stones. And right now it doesn't have all the dragon stones, and the stones are scattered across multiple kingdoms that are having problems, because of the Demon King, and once you help out the kingdom, you get the dragon stone. Oh, that's great. Games need a sense of progression after all, and each time you get a stone, you get to transform into a cool new dragon with cool new powers. Amaya added. Yeah, that does sound cool. Collect dragon stones to defeat the Demon King. Ken smirked. Great job Fuku. Thank you. Fuku stuttered. I think Fuku should be the lead writer. Said a voice coming from Ken's closet. Mew? Fuku shouted out in shock. Wait, like Mew the ghost boy? Nara asked. Isn't that the kid no one ever sees? Ken looked at his closest in confusion. Why are you in my closest? Well, I saw that you were making a game, and I wanted to help too, Mew explained from inside the closest. But, I don't like being seen by people. So I hid the closest. Is that okay? Ken shrugged. Sure. Knock yourself out. Cool. Thanks. Mew said. So what did you say about Fuku being lead writer? Ken asked. Huh? Fuku piped up, remembering Mew's original proposition, and suddenly becoming very nervous. Wait. Why me? Because you like to write stories a lot, Mew explained. I think they're really good. Oh, yeah, Fuku's really creative. She comes up with all sorts of ways she thinks people could kill her. pointed out without a hint of self-awareness. She does do that. Eri agreed, although she winced as she did so. Well, she did already come up with a good main plot. So I guess making her the head writer is for the best. Nara shrugged. Yeah, sure. That sounds good. Ken agreed. Wait. I didn't agree to this. Fuku objected, before shooting a mean look at the closet, which was Mew because Mew couldn't see it. And you weren't supposed to tell anyone about that, Mew. Not cool. Sorry, Mew said apologetically. I just think your stories are really good, and it's a shame more people can't read what you write. I.U.HMPH. Fuku pouted under her hood. Don't say nice things like that when I'm mad at you. Come now, dear sister, this is your time to shine. Kiba urged her. Just imagine how you'll feel when you see all those people praising your writing. But what if they hate it? Fuku countered fearfully. I don't think I could take it if the internet started banning my writing. I don't think that'll happen, Fu said. You're an abused 8-year-old girl. Anyone who harshly criticizes your writing is not the kind of person whose opinion you should care about. What are you worried about? Netsu spoke up. So long as you put passion into what you do, people will recognize it. Just work super hard and you'll get tons of people praising you. That's surprisingly profound, Shruku said, not expecting something like that from Netsu. I think you can do it, Fuku. Eri encouraged her, patting her on the back. Yeah, you can do it. K joined in on the back patting. I think it's the right choice. Fuku was still very unsure about this. Also, since you're getting a more important role, you'd be getting more of the money, Ken added. Fuku's eyes went wide under the hoodie. Well, I guess I could do it. Koda laughed. Wow, all that encouraging from your family and the money is the thing that convinces you. That's not the reason. He just happened to say that after I made up my mind. Fuku lied, her face red with embarrassment. It's okay, sister, I know how enticing money is, Shruku said, before looking at Ken. By the way, I'm getting a lot of cash because I'm the lead character designer, right? Sure, Ken answered. Fantastic, Shruku said, smiling with delight. This is going to be fun. Okay, let's establish what everyone's characters are going to be, Fu said. One at a time. So we're not constantly speaking over each other. Kiba, you first. Okay. I want to be the vampire queen of a kingdom of eternal night. Kiba started excitedly. I'm a warrior queen who draws power from the blood moon. Fuku took out a notebook and started writing all this down, so she wouldn't forget anything and make anyone angry. Alright, Netsu, how about you? Fu asked. I wanna be swordsman who wields a sword made of fire and wanders the land fighting for justice. Netsu said. You mean sword that's on fire or a sword made of fire? Fu asked. A sword, made of fire. Netsu emphasized. Alright, Shruku here, next, Fu said. I don't really want to be in the game or anything. I just want to make the character designs, and get paid. Shruku admitted. Wow, so shameless. Koda sniggered. Don't pretend like you're not here for some reason. Shruku rolled her many eyes. That's not the only reason, I think it'd be cool to be in a video game, Koda argued. Okay then, what role do you want? Fu asked him. I wanna be a demigod. Koda smirked. One that commands the waves themselves, and takes vengeance on anyone who disrespects them. A demigod? Darn it, I should have thought of that. Kiba cursed her oversight. Wow, another big ego, what a surprise, Fu said, rolling his eyes. Anyway, what about Eri? Too, since I guess your stories are gonna be intertwined. I just wanted to be a princess, I didn't really think of anything else. Eri admitted sadly. Sorry. And I just wanted to be with Eri, and be a snake, catted with a shrug. I think I can make that work. Fuku said, thinking out the story in her head. What if Eri is the princess of time, that watches over the course of history, with her guardian, the Greek snake? and when the Demon Lord comes and threatens her world, and when no one can wield the Genius Gauntlet, she summons someone from another world who can. Oh, that sounds so cool! Gasped, her eyes widening in amazement. Heck yeah, that's amazing. Ken smiled widely. Chosen hero, picked by the Princess of Time. I like the sound of that. Great job, Fuku. I knew I was paying you for something. You haven't paid me yet, Fuku mumbled. Are you okay with Eri? Fu asked. Eri nodded, and gave Fuku a thumbs up, making the hooded girl blush. By the way, what role do you want, Fuku? Nara asked. Oh well. Fuku hesitated. It might sound a bit silly, but please don't judge me for it. You're fine. Just say it. Ken told her. Okay. I want to be Lady Kiba's younger sister. A warrior princess who was called Eri to help the hero, and ran away at the beginning of the game, to aid them. Fuku explained very quickly, before going silent and nervously waiting for everyone's reactions. Oh, so you're going to be the tutorial character. Amaya summarized. The one who introduces all the gameplay mechanics, and tells us about the world. All you. My sweet little sister. Kiba wrapped her arms around Fuku, bringing her into a hug. How utterly adorable. I accept this with all of my black heart. Lady Kiba. Please, this is embarrassing. Fuku pleaded, although that didn't stop her from leaning into the embrace. Come now, there's no shame in being hugged by your big sister. Kiba insisted. Isn't Fuku older than Kiba? Amaya whispered to Yami. Yami shrugged. They don't care. Alright, Izuku, you're next, Fu said. Izuku nodded, and raised a sign that he'd been writing on, which read, I want to be a nice-looking prince that rules over plants and protects nature. Alright. Yami? What about you? Fu asked. Not in-game. Draw monsters. Yami explained. So you want to be the monster designer? That makes sense. Fu said. Yeah, you're pretty much a monster designer in real life. Netsu pointed out. What about you, Nara? Fu asked. Well, I don't want to do the same thing as Ken, so how about a witch? Nara decided. I always liked reading about magic systems and fiction, so being witch sounds good. I thought you were one already. Ken snickered, earning a glare from his sister. What about you, Fu? What did you want to be? Fu shrugged. I don't really care. I just came because I thought this would interesting to watch. Same. Mu said from the closet. Okay. So the last person is Amaya, Shruku said. Do you want to be in the game, Amaya? Not really, I just wanted to talk about the gameplay, Amaya said. By the way, what kind of gameplay is the game gonna have? Oh right, that. Ken said, his eyes going wide as he realized he forgot something very important. You wanted to make a game, but didn't even decide what kind of game it was going to be. Nara said, mocking him with a smug look on her face. Shut it or I'm cutting your character. Ken threatened. Well, if you haven't decided, then RPG is probably the best. It's not my favorite genre, but it's pretty simple and harder to mess up, Amaya explained. It's also a good genre for long games, and this seems like it's gonna be one of those. Alright, sounds good, I like a good RPG, Ken said. And I can go all out on the super attacks. This game is gonna look so good it'll blow people's minds. That's good. Lots of people will just buy a game for its graphics, even if the game itself is total garbage. Amaya said. Which it won't be if I have anything to say about it. So, Fuku is going to be a lead writer. Shruku will be the character designer, Yami will be the monster designer, Amaya will be the gameplay designer, and Ken will be the one actually making the game. Fu summarized. We still need someone to design the world itself. Cities, and forest, and stuff. And we'll need someone to market the game, and let people know about it. I will be the one to spread the word of our game far and wide. Kiba proudly volunteered. I'll have my followers tell the entire world about it. And I'll ask Caretaker if he can help us make a trailer once enough of the game is done. Is it really okay to ask him to spend all that money? I looked up how much money is spent on advertising, and it's ridiculous. Nara said, wincing slightly. We already had to ask him for money for the equipment to make the game, and he also has to spend money to feed and houses us, as well as giving us everything we could ever want. Relax. Once this game sells, we'll give him all the money he spent and more. Ken told her, looking almost a bit offended at what she was saying. I'm not just gonna take from Izuku without giving back. What am I, a parasite? I can design the world. Fuku offered. If that's okay with you guys. Sure, go for it, Ken said. Alright. Now that we have a game plan, this meeting is done. Fu said. You all know what you have to do, so get to it. Remember. Money. Yeah. Cheered Ken, Shraku, and Fuku. You guys are kinda shameless. Amaya giggled, finding this extremely amusing. I like it. As the meeting ended, and everyone started to leave, Amaya grabbed Yami's sleeve. Can we talk? In your room? After a quick trip to Yami's room, the two sat on Yami's bed, and Amaya began to speak. So, my school is having a sports festival soon, Amaya explained, blushing slightly for some reason. Yami titled his head. Like you, huh? No. It's nowhere near as big as something like that. Amaya smiled at the childish misunderstanding. It reminded her how innocent he was despite his appearance, and how smart he actually was. Lots of schools have events like this, but A's is one of a kind. But it's still pretty important for my school. And I really hate to lose. Even if it's not at video games. I would really appreciate it if you went and cheered me on. Amaya turned away, as she awaited her answer. There was a long pause before Yami gave his response. Don't be afraid to ask me things, Yami said. Huh? Amaya turned back and saw Yami staring intensely at her. You are my friend, Yami said, trying to get his words right. You make me happy. So don't be scared to ask me things. I want to make you happy. Amaya's blush intensified, and she almost squealed a little bit. So you'll come? Yami nodded and gave her a small smile. It was more like his mouth twitched upwards, but that was just how Yami smiled. Amaya gave a nervous smile in return, trying not to make it obvious how much her heart was pounding. GG, great. Thank you so much. Yami nodded again, accepted her gratitude. Afterward, there was a long, awkward silence, with Amaya looking away from Yami, and going to ask your dad for permission. Bye. Eventually, Amaya couldn't take the awkwardness, and ran out, leaving Yami slightly confused. If only he could pinpoint what that strange positive emotion she was feeling was. Author's note: alright, so this was the beginning of the game development subplot. Like the actual beginning. It's gonna last for a while, because being creative is hard, and takes a while. I would know. Anyway, next we're gonna do a sports festival. And not that one. It's more that we get to see Yami public. And how he reacts to a regular school, and how they react to him.